You're listening to Hair of the Dogcast, a proud part of the Greenlit Podcast Network. Check out Hair of the Dogcast and all of Greenlit shows at greenlitpodcasts.com. It is time for Hair of the Dogcast's official ranking of the Final Fantasy games. It's unimpeachable, it is the definitive list, and it can never be undone. The whole world will have to adhere to this. Who's with us today to do this amazing exercise?
They call me the Big Choco-bro. This is Brad. They used to call me the Black Choco-bro before my image was released, but my first rap album went well. And I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm doing well. Final Fantasy VII Remake is going well. I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning. I played for 3 hours before my girlfriend woke up.
That's crazy. Dude, that's dedication.
It was great. I'm really loving it so far.
I'm sure we will be talking about that game ad nauseum for many episodes to come.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the ranking, Brad. Who's next to Brad?
We're all in different locations for different computers.
We are, yeah.
I'm just curious. Who's next to Brad?
We are. I'll be next to Brad. This is Dylan, aka Big Tex, and I looked up the ending and watched the ending to the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And okay. I'm not saying anything.
Sinks.
I'm just.
I thought you were going to say you looked up the ending.
I'm just going to nod my head and go,
which I was like, wow, some Spaceball shit.
And it turns out I was right. I was right. So in case you don't know, Big Tex is my new name. Dylan is my name from the before times.
It's great to have you back after the break.
Fuck.
Thank you. Sorry.
Big Tex
is not catching on.
Yeah. And we got an extra special guest today to help us with this. We have a man who needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyways. Jake Packniak.
Jake.
How's it going,
Jake,
guys? Thanks
how
for having
are
me
you?
on the show. I'm doing awesome. I've been looking forward to this all week to talk about these games and, just really, throw down and get it all on the table and pick the best Final Fantasy and the correct ranking. Because I've seen a lot of, I looked at a lot of other rankings out there. And they're all non-definitive, as we have not done this podcast yet. So,
exactly.
I'm looking forward to setting the record straight here.
Everybody's waiting for us. And just to give us a little bit of background, Jake, what do you do in the video game space? You stream? Are you one of them internet streamers?
I'm one of those. I'm a newly just started streaming internet. Just started streaming games. And having a lot of fun with it. I did it, before all the Corona stuff started happening. But as it turns out, it's worked out, and just got a way to connect with old friends, meet new people. So I've just kind of been playing my favorites or titles that I have in the backlog or I'm interested in. Cool. It's been awesome.
Yeah. And you also might know him from MTV from back in the day. So
I did that. That's another life. But yeah. Rock bands of the past.
What?
Yes.
It's cool to say that you've had a music video played on MTV or had a song in Rock Band. Those are awesome things.
I'm not familiar with this. What's going on?
So back in the college days, my band at the time won a Best Music on Campus contest that MTV was having nationwide, and we won. We got a development deal with Universal Records. We got to record a track in Chicago with an engineer who had worked on Three Doors Down, Disturbed, Finger 11, and got to shoot a music video in New York. It was awesome. It was really, really cool. $40,000 budget, and it was awesome. And the Rock Band stuff came later. I kind of did that and got a few bands into a Rock Band on the Rock Band Network thing. So a little background on me, and so you can check me on Twitch, Jaek Rock, Jake Jaek. I should say that because it might not be intuitive if you're just listening to this. It's
such a rock star spelling.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
All right. Well, Jake, welcome to the podcast, and welcome, listeners. This is going to get very heated, and it's going to be a great time had by all. So, without further ado, our goal here is to rank all the mainline Final Fantasy games, with the exception of the MMO games. So,
Which should have been included, but thank you. Whatever.
No, you can't rank all numbered games if you don't have the 2 of the numbered games in.
See, my only blind spots are 3 games, and
I think we should just agree that the MMOs are in the middle, but we should rank one over the other.
Yeah,
Dylan, when this is all done, we'll ask you.
Not the original 14, because 14 original should be under 11.
No. I'm talking Shadowbringer.
Okay, yeah.
Shadowbringer.
All right.
Yeah.
So before we get started, just want to lay down just a couple ground rules here to abide by as much as possible. First off, hopefully we can focus on the original releases as much as possible. Not so much remakes, remasters, unless they were like the only version of the game that you played. Exceptions being like Final Fantasy 2, 3, 5 games that weren't initially released, where the original releases did not come out in the U.S.
There's some tricky stuff there with like Final Fantasy 3, because the original Famicom release, I think, is a much better aesthetic than the DS release.
Sure.
And they added,
and a lot of the iOS
they
ports.
Added characters. They like gave the Onions, like the Warriors of Light character names and stuff, which was a little weird, but yeah. So we're talking original releases.
Yeah, as much as possible, the originals. And number 2, when considering no expanded universe material, so no Kingsglaives, Advent Children's, no 10-2s.
Dirge of Cerberus, can we consider that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
In fact, you're disqualified from the podcast. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. And the other one is to feel free to bring up the games in an organic fashion when relevant. We're not going to really go
Final
down
Fantasy
the
12
list
is the best one ever. I'm sorry. I'm organic.
Okay. And last of all, let's have fun, gentlemen. This is going to be a great time. And I will start the conversation by throwing out the first game, if that's all right with y'all.
Or
the first game of all. In your ranking, or the first game?
No, just the first game to ponder, to discourse, to deliberate. And I bring up to you, gentlemen, Final Fantasy 15, the last Final Fantasy to be released.
Good starting point.
This isn't really a Final Fantasy game, right?
It's a Final Fantasy game. It is a main numbered series game. It is Final Fantasy by name. I don't think you can say it's not. It doesn't need to be turn-based. It doesn't need to have...
I mean, it's on the cover, I guess, but...
It has a group of characters. There are Chocobos and ramen noodles. It's got everything Final Fantasy needs. That's what I think
Coleman campsite.
And a Sid, which is, of course,
and a Sid.
Yes. It has more Sids than Final Fantasy 1.
This is true.
There you go.
That's true.
So, the reason I brought it up, going through all the games, this one I had a really hard time just kind of trying to pin down, because when I think about this Final Fantasy series in general, I remember having a fun time playing this game. I think I enjoyed it. You can go back on the old podcasts and hear me talk about how much I was kind of liking it. But when I'm thinking about the actual what it comprises of Final Fantasy, like this one, I just never enters my brain. Like I have to always think twice about it. Like, oh yeah, Final Fantasy 15 is part of that. Like I consider Final Fantasy 13, a game that we will talk about later, having more Final Fantasy DNA than Final Fantasy 15.
15
better? No.
15 is a more realistic like character design.
I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying. Go ahead, Brad.
15's character design is set in a more realistic tone, whereas I think 13 looks more classically like over the top, colorful characters. Just the fact that 15 starts off with you in a car with your 3 homies, and you're all wearing like pretty normal looking black clothing, and your car breaks down. That's very non-traditional approach, but you have a sword and you have some angst. That's half of it.
You do have that, yeah, and like you said, you have the car, but I'd like to, I guess, talk about the story, but there really wasn't one. At least if you played it.
It was hidden in like codex entries.
Well, what patch did you play?
Well, I played it day one, and I also saw the Kingsglaive movie, which was supposed to be a prequel.
I mean,
so from what I understand, there is a kingship that is protecting the planet from an alien threat, and that alien threat is like a Final Fantasy VII style scourge from the skies, and they use all these basically summons, and these summons are kind of godlike creatures, and they comprise this pantheon that helped protect the planet, and now one of them betrayed them, which is Ifrit, which is why you fight Ifrit at the end. And it takes the side of one of the ancestors of Noctis, which is what's his name?
Dingbo.
Izania. Arden. And which is an offshoot of originally Arden was this healer who kind of healed people of the scourge from the skies, and eventually he started taking on a demonic form because he was taking in so much of that evil, and Ifrit didn't like that, and he turned against the other summons.
No.
And
Ifrit will remember that.
And so I guess Arden is like your great grand uncle within the game.
Weird.
That's actually revealed.
But par for the course.
And
yeah, I mean, I guess that's the story.
Not well
Can we
told.
talk about it's how much of that wasn't there from day one? I mean,
development cycle. The fact that it was part of like the Fabula Nova Crystallis. Nomura was
FF
still hung up on
versus
Kingdom
13,
Hearts maybe too much.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, this is Kingdom Hearts style gameplay. It's the Square Enix kind of lean in on this whole action RPG thing because they don't trust people to actually sit down with a menu-based system anymore.
Josh, yeah. Where are you, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking
essentially.
of the actual combat, I never felt like I got a grasp on that. For me, it was just button mashing. I mean, just like Kingdom Hearts is to me, but even more chaotic.
Yeah.
Just what the fuck is going on? I knew how to warp to enemies, and that was about it. I don't know. Did you guys ever get it? Do you guys feel like you had a grasp on the combat? It flowed well for you, or?
I did.
Okay.
I actually did. You do have magical spells in this game, but what's weird about them is you can only use them as surprise attacks because you have a bunch of your friends, which is basically every other party member, basically ganging up on any individual. So if you don't use fire from far away, you basically blow up all of your friends. It's a poorly implemented system. They do patch it to be a little bit different, but it never stuck because you can basically hold down the square button, and that's your attack, right? And you don't have to button mash with this. You can just hold that down, and he'll perform combos on his own. Noctis. It's all about switching your weapons and figuring out what the enemy is weak to. That's pretty much it.
I didn't care for 15.
It's piercing.
I played it for maybe 10, 15 hours. The gameplay loop was pretty fun, but it didn't put its claws in me. The story didn't get going, and I ultimately just didn't care. My favorite thing, I mean, was just the fact that they had classic Final Fantasy songs for your car. I thought that was cool.
That was great, from all the different games.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when I made my lists, I made two lists. One is my favorite in order, and the other one is what I consider the best. I think there's a small delineation there, but Final Fantasy 15 wound up at around 10 or 11 overall.
That's almost exactly where mine is. Mine is 9.
There are worse games, but this one ultimately doesn't, I think, do what Final Fantasy does great.
Right.
It was a spin-off that was it was just shoehorned into the title.
So my ranking will have a big old fat asterisk by it because this is actually one of the games that I have not played yet. I have the Royal Edition downloaded on my computer, and I have not played it yet. So
right on. And now you don't need to because we just told you everything that happens.
Yeah, no, and I did research it, and a big part of it is I did not have a PS4, so I had to wait for it to port to PC, and then all these other games are coming out and whatever. So it's been sitting there waiting for me, and have yet to get into it. So I've got it kind of in the middle of the pack because I know which games I liked and did not like, and so it came in right at 7 for me.
I will say this: some of the DLC is very good in this game. The episode Prompto is great, and the episode Ignis is pretty good. Episode Gladio can just take a big dump on itself.
And they cut off the DLC, right?
There's one for Arden, too, then, I think, right? Okay.
I never played the Arden one.
The fishing mini game was fun. And the virtual reality fishing game was also fun.
Did you catch a big sea monster?
Yeah, I caught a lot of fish.
What was the DLC? There was DLC that was announced for it, but Square just said, fuck it, we're not going to come out with it anymore.
There's even like an Assassin's Creed
No,
they
never will.
That.
Yeah.
No, that came out.
Okay.
I did that.
But I'm kind of with you, Brad. I enjoyed it as a game. except I thought, the end part got really linear. It became like, it was like an open world game. And then you were like shoehorned into this like end sequence that was just, just alone.
If you have people that are dying to come play the new Final Fantasy game and it doesn't grab them, it's a failure.
Right. Yeah. There you go. Do we dare try to put this in ranking now? Or should we talk about some other ones?
I think we should just I don't know how you want to do this. Like one of those tier list things that you see on the YouTube, or do you want to just
on the YouTube?
There's so many
just
tiers.
Put it on I don't know, 8 or 9. You can just put it there and we can move stuff around.
For me, it's
all right.
8.
We'll put it.
That's cool.
We'll put it at 8. And we'll see how this shakes out. There we go. Our first lock.
Our first very soft lock, because things are going to move around.
Yeah, soft lock.
Oh, and by the way, Hair of the Dogcast is a podcast about beer and Final Fantasy and beer, and we drink real live beer. It seems like everyone else is drinking beer, and God damn it, I'm going to too.
I went with the name theme, and I've got some Fantasy Factory going on right now.
Oh yeah.
He's mine is also themed now that I'm thinking about it. Fear Movie Lions by Stone Brewing. Lions like Lionheart in Final Fantasy VIII.
I am drinking the Seafoam from 1840, also in line because there's submarines in Final Fantasy 3. So I was thinking ahead.
I think Josh is drinking that today too.
A lot of them.
Very good.
I think. And I am drinking a West Vleteren Belgian beer because it sounds like a continent in a nondescript Final Fantasy game. So that's the best I could do on that one. Okay, 15 has been put on the list at number 8.
Okay.
Dylan, what do you want to talk about?
We are going to bring up Final Fantasy V next. Final Fantasy V is one that not a lot of people have played because it wasn't originally released in America. The first time people would have been able to play this was on the Final Fantasy Anthology, which is it's basically 5 and 6 on the PlayStation, and that's when I first played it. Yeah. And I remember being very absorbed by this game, but I don't remember a ton else about it. It involves the job system. I remember Exdeath being a very memorable villain in terms of design. It's basically an Amano drawing, and it turns out he was a tree.
Yeah.
I remember that specifically. I think Butts is a funny name.
He is Butts.
That was a lead character, right? Butts?
Yeah. His name is supposed to be Bartz. In Japanese, it sounds like Batsu. It sounds like Batsu. So it translated as Butts instead of Bartsu.
Wasn't the first one with the job system, because that one really wound up being 3, but
that's 3.
This one introduced multi-classing, where you could bring some abilities from other jobs over, which I think is a very versatile system that they were able to take from this and build on in some other games down the line. I really do appreciate this game quite a bit, and it's not only because Gilgamesh, who is one of the best characters in the series. Gilgamesh is, of course, the right-hand man of Exdeath. He's like a shit-talking dude, and he has he's got such great lines.
Battle on the bridge.
I'm sorry I lied, just like a rug. That some jokes did not get
the
lost in translation. But yeah, he ends up liking your party after you beat him so much that he's like in hell and he saves you from Necrophobe. Gilgamesh, this is the best iteration of him, at least, but I think the story works a lot better. I mean, I think the main character, Butts, is a little weak, but I think there's a lot of good moments, like Galuf, one of the Warriors of Dawn. He was a long-term party member. He died about halfway through. The Exdeath knocks his HP down to 0, and he keeps fighting. Like, what a badass moment is that?
Yeah, he does get replaced by
travels over, so it's not like you're suffering too much from it. But
no, you get all of his shit transferred over, which is really cool. Well, another thing, like this one was very straightforward. I don't find the characters as memorable as 4. That was a big drop off in my opinion. I think the characters in 4, I remember all their names, and I remember Butts because Butts, but also we call him Bartz. And then there's Galuf. I remember Galuf, but the pirate woman's name is Ferris.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Or is it Lena?
Let me consult the ultimatum.
Ferris.
Because there are only technically 5 party members.
So have you guys all
game.
played it then? Because I have not played this one.
I have not.
5 minutes.
I have it on Anthology, but have not played it on Anthology. So we're hitting all the ones that I haven't got to yet.
Ferris is the pirate lady.
It is Ferris. Yeah, cool.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. She was very memorable because she was kind of not a gender bender, but I think it confused a lot of people. So
many confusing
notable for that
in the
reason,
Final Fantasy
if anything.
So do I have this? Was this Sakaguchi's last directorial stab?
No,
I think this was his last one, wasn't it?
It was 6.
I feel like he produced 6, but this one was the last one that he directed.
I think so.
Really? Because I'm looking
I watched
it up
a
right
YouTube
now.
video.
The last thing he
Somebody said
directed
that.
was The Spirits Within.
Oh yeah, he should have stopped while he was ahead. Ba-boom, tag.
Yeah, it was
Final Fantasy V. That was his
Katase who
last
did
one.
6.
Right.
But he stuck.
I feel like this is like a culmination of what came before for the Final Fantasies. It was the job system,
But he helped write it.
It was a story driven one which they kind of flip flopped up to 5. Like we're driving by story, we're throwing in some job systems now, we're going back to story.
Yeah.
Right.
And this one kind of pulled it together, and I think the replayability factor kind of helps this title out a lot, and that you can play it a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I know there were a few reasons given. I don't know if it's ever been proven why it wasn't released, or why, because I think translation had begun on the game to bring it over, or localization. But some people say it was too hard. This was during the phase where Square didn't have faith in the American audience to understand.
They were spoon feeding us Mystic Quest at that time, I think.
Right.
So,
Take your medicine.
And
You mean what is it? Something of Mana? Legend of Mana? Oh wait,
I think
that's Final Fantasy.
it's Final Fantasy Adventure.
Mythic Quest. No, that's different.
yeah.
Yeah. Final Fantasy Adventure. For the Game Boy.
Primary reason was just translation. They didn't have the time to crank all that out because they were able to produce games pretty quick back then.
I know. What happened?
Yeah, but at the same time,
I was watching a video earlier and they said it was translation.
That's too bad, because it's like
I played the Game Boy Advance.
I mean,
What's that,
they
Jake?
couldn't even get the main character's name right in translations 8 years later.
Exactly, and it's too bad because I think the closer you got to these games, to their original release, the more their hooks kind of got in you, and you. I think coming out on the anthology, it just kind of lost its window to really hold its place.
Mm-hmm.
I would put this above 15 though.
It is above 15 in my book as well.
All right.
Maybe
it's one position higher. I literally
We're
have
talking
it as number
7. Okay.
I'm comfy with that.
All right. 2 prime numbers.
I have it as 6 or 7 on both of my lists. So
Okay,
I never
good.
played it, so I have it towards the bottom.
I don't even count the ones I haven't played. I haven't put them on the list because I know I'd probably like 12. Never played
let's
it.
not talk. Let's
We'll
not
get to
talk
that.
about
Fucking
12 yet.
garbage.
Let's talk about Final Fantasy VIII.
Okay.
So
Here we go.
And the gloves come off. Ding.
All right, it's finally started. Jake, I've got to show you something
While
before
he's
we keep
taking
going.
his
shirt
Just a moment.
See it? There it is. Oh, man.
No.
And he's got Zell eating a hot dog on his ass.
Yeah, I've got a Zell hot dog on my ass, and it says more hot dogs, please.
Okay, so Dylan, Final Fantasy VIII. I've heard you say that you hold deep reverence for this.
I do. I think it's underrated. I think a lot of people were fresh off the boat on Final Fantasy VII, and then when 8 came out, they were expecting something. And like every Final Fantasy, there's always something different that you're not going to get from the previous title. And I think everyone was being snooty, and I think everyone was being a goddamn jerk.
It wasn't
a big beanie head jerk. I honestly this is a very good video game. I replayed it all recently. It is a very good video game. It's not even just serviceable. It's absolutely fantastic considering what Final Fantasy would become. If anyone says 8 is a bad video game, I am willing to go to fisticuffs.
There do seem to be a lot of 8 apologists these days.
I played it for the first time before I had any internet reactions, and I had played a lot of Final Fantasies then.
I don't think it's a bad
video game. I
video
remember
game.
loving it.
I think
it's not.
the junction system and the drawing of magic. I think this is the first Final Fantasy game where you don't feel like you actually own magic. You're spending a big portion of your time in battles drawing magic, which...
Now, hold on.
Hold on to your hats, people.
That's true. What pushed me away. It's like, I don't want to spend extra time doing this. I like to have ownership over those spells, and I didn't feel like I had that. You don't have to, but coming off of 7 as a younger player, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm saying the system, it doesn't work the way a lot of people would prefer it to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they didn't actually explore the system. And I promise you they didn't, because if they actually had touched the way the Guardian forces work, they would have understood that you can draw certain things from items you gain from specific enemies by defeating them, and you can transform that into magic instead of straight up drawing it from enemies. It's more or less that they didn't explain it.
What do you got going on there, Jake?
And that's how I'm going to put it out there.
No, there was a point in time where I think Disc 1 of Final Fantasy VIII was probably the most played Final Fantasy portion that I've ever done, because I could not get into it. And then I'd leave it alone and I'd come back to it because I forgot what happened. And for me, the characters just didn't draw me in. The junctioning and magic system was a big reason, I think, for that. And I just couldn't – I don't know if I was – not understanding it right, or it just seemed unnecessary to me that you had systems that worked before, and yet I totally agree that Final Fantasy is all about doing something new and not just holding status quo. But I think they shifted just too much away, or tried to branch off, and they haven't really revisited those themes in subsequent games and built off those like they have with other successful things like active time battle, or even just from turn-based to active battle modes. I loved Triple Triad though. That was a big part of my issue with getting off Disc 1 is I like
You're not alone.
finding people to play Triple Triad with, and I was damn good at it, man. I was getting all those cards.
Yeah, fuck you, Gwent. It's all about Triple Triad.
That was great. And it was a beautiful looking game. It looks much better than 7, in my opinion. Much better.
First time in like the real proportioned people.
One of the best soundtracks in a Final Fantasy game.
And the music in it is great too. So I'll definitely give it that as well. It's just for me the biggest hang up, after I got off Disc 1, was you get into the story. And it rewards you with everyone grew up in the same orphanage and had amnesia and knows each other and went to school with the guy that raised them, doesn't remember.
The bad guy is actually the person who raised them.
But he fights sorcerers, and I couldn't do it.
Just give me butts.
I did it, but
I got to the final boss of that game. I played all the way up to that, and I don't remember. I had to revisit the game, obviously, for this thing, but I remember very little. I didn't have fun with it, or as much fun as I did with other Final Fantasies. I know that... oh, I'm sorry, Dylan. Dylan, you okay? Do you need to take a...
Fine. No, it's fine.
I'm not saying I don't think it's a great game. It's just not one of my favorites.
I'm saying it's not a great game.
Triple Triad alone makes it a great game.
Right.
It's a good game.
I loved Triple Triad when I played it. Yeah.
The themes there. So the reason they forget each other is explained very early in the game. It's explained very early, and then the rest of it is truly like Sid weaponizes these children. As awful as that sounds, he weaponizes them against his wife essentially in order to defeat her, because she gained so much power that he said the true people who can like awaken her and like redeem her are the people that she helped raise. And the Guardian forces early on, there's this idea that when you have a Guardian force, they take up a certain part of your brain and they start eating away at the memories in the other parts of your brain. So the more Guardian forces you have, the less memory you're able to maintain. And so it basically... It's like it treats your brain like a computer. Do you not have 100 gigs ready for Quetzalcoatl? Get ready. It's gonna boot some shit out of there.
Squall is the most angsty character in all of Final Fantasy. Is there someone more angsty you would say as a main protagonist in the whole series?
That's another reason.
He's not really that angsty. he's
Cypher?
angsty to begin with,
not a
but
main protection.
right after.
Angsty.
Oh yes, Cypher. Yes. No, he's angsty, but in like a realistic way. He has no trust in anyone. The whole story arc of his character, his whole character arc, is learning to trust people, and he does it pretty quickly because people depend on his leadership and his ability to pull people together.
Speaking of story arc,
And also my favorite Final Fantasy character is in this game, and it's not Squall.
who is it?
It's
Laguna.
Okay,
it's
because
Laguna.
I was just gonna say, like,
Laguna Beach.
Does
I used to
anybody
watch
else
that
think
show.
I thought the Laguna sequences just totally took the wind out of the sails. I don't know if you guys
I want
feel
some more.
Well,
I want
that's
some more of that,
part of the mystery. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of people said that, actually. They were like, I want to see more of this story because it was something kind of like different and interesting. Basically, you're seeing memories of a past. Like, first of all, should we be saying that there are spoiler alerts within this?
yes.
Spoiler alerts.
Everybody, there will be spoilers.
Spoiler alerts. FF8 has some weak characters
So
outside of Squall and Renoa and Laguna, but like Zell, Selphie, Irvine, Quistis.
With you 100%.
I think
they're not weak.
Most of them
Forgettable
are quite
cast.
one-dimensional.
I remember them all.
I remember Squall and Cypher. I mean, I forgot Renoa's name. I think I remembered Selphie for some reason because there's always a
Because she has
Selphie
a jump
in these
rope in
games.
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably why, actually. But, yeah, I don't know. I would never say it's a horrible game, but it was one that was, at least in my mind, forgettable. I don't know.
Okay. I know I'm the odd man out here, so my ranking is going to pull this. If this is a curve, this is going to pull this very far ahead. So it is not my number one. I will say that. This was my number.
I would
three.
place this between 5 and 15. Gilgamesh is good, baby.
Yeah, I had this at 8.
I had it at 7.
Well, would you put it between 5 and 15 or above or below?
I would put it above both of those.
As a Final Fantasy game, I would put it
Head my way.
above. I had more fun with 15, but again, I have problems reconciling that that's actually a Final Fantasy. So I would put it above 15.
And 5?
I didn't play 5. I got to go off your guys'
Jake,
assessment.
what do you think?
I didn't play 5 either, so I gotta punt on that one.
All right, we're going to go with Dylan's curve. It's above 5 and 15, but I don't think it should be too much higher than 6th or 5th.
Yeah, we're gonna struggle at the top here. I can tell.
We'll go with 6 for now. We can move things around still, though.
We'll move things around. Yeah, don't worry. We're just
Jake, what do you want to talk about next?
Let's talk about the game that my favorite character comes from. I don't know if you called him Cecil or Cecil. Final Fantasy IV.
Oh, yay! All right, now a game that I've bought in several different incarnations.
Yep.
All right, Jake, why do you love this game? Or
oh my gosh! So I think this game is probably a lot of people's introduction to like real Final Fantasy, right? Even if you played the original NES title or whatever, it was a good RPG. But this story that they came out with and the focus on the characters and the cool classes that you got to play and summons and everything else. You had a playable character, Sid. You got the introduction to the Dark Crystals and really memorable bad guy, awesome music. 4 is one that just really stands up for me. It's not the longest game, so it's like it's pretty easy to like absorb and get into and get out of. You can't say about all these games for sure.
Right. I never realized how short it was because as a kid, it was probably the first Final Fantasy I played.
Yeah.
When I'm a kid, I'm like, I play fucking Mario and Mega Man. So Final Fantasy 2, as it was in the US, like that just seemed like amazingly long. And then going back and replaying it, you realize, oh, this really wasn't
not so bad. But I think, the focus on Cecil as a character, and they gave him, kind of this deeper backstory. He's got this relationship with Cain and Rosa in the beginning, and that develops over the course of the whole game. And you just find out a little bit more about where he comes from, and he's half Lunarian, and that's awesome.
You go to the fucking moon. So, you ride a lunar whale.
Yes. Go to the moon.
Just like Final Fantasy VIII.
There's so many cool moments in this that the series built off of introduction of active time battle.
They got some like science fiction elements in this game.
It totally did. I mean, Giant of Babel. You're going in and
the Lunar Whale.
Yes. Which is basically a
totally bards and annoying twin characters.
Spoonie bards. Yeah.
Edward.
And some memorable.
Gilbert. Yes,
and you mean Palom and Param?
Lost Odyssey.
Come on, Brad.
That was a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, there's some really memorable sacrifices. Turn into stone to stop the walls from caving in. You had Tella sacrifice.
Tella was
very similar.
Tella was the first permanent death in Final Fantasy, I want to say.
Certainly the first one I experienced. Yeah,
that's true.
That stuck with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
and
holy
I think,
shit.
They kind of revisited that. It was kind of a similar thing to Galuf in 5 that they revisited, where he's casting Medio on the big baddie. Right.
Guy,
yeah. So they reused that again, and it was memorable moments that like draw all these characters together and propel the story forward. So,
I will say this: a lot of them come back from the
That's
dead
one negative.
pretty
I
quick.
totally agree with you. They kind of cheapen a lot of those sacrifices the way that they bring them all back.
Palom and Param are all of a sudden on a airship. And even look at us, we're back.
Like, Sid jumps off an airship with a bomb strapped to him and somehow survives.
That would have been an awesome ending.
Yang blows up, in the Tower of Babel, and again is found in the Sylph Cave later. So I don't know. This is probably the Final Fantasy I've played the most, and for good reason. I mean, it's a story worth revisiting, and they do set up some side quests as well. You can find Yang in the Sylph Cave or not. There's some explorable stuff here.
Yeah,
so.
the side stuff is really entertaining, especially when you get to like the underworld. Flying around in the underworld is infinitely entertaining. It's where you can find like Excalibur and a bunch of this other stuff for Cecil, and it really, to me, this is kind of one of my definitive, like, there's so much to see here just because of the technology that helped create it. Like, they gave you little side caves and stuff like that because it was just as easy as, like, photocopying another cave.
Yeah, being a kid with a brand new SNES, it was mind-blowing at the time when my buddy brought that game over. Just so different than... anything I'd played. It's probably the first RPG game that I actually played all the way through as a kid. So
now I will say this: the original graphics don't hold up so well, especially on like the anthology. I originally played this on the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
And it's really good on the Game Boy Advance, but I do have to make a special shout out to
the DS,
the remake they did on the DS, and which looks absolutely phenomenal, and it still plays exactly the way it should. And you know what they did? They didn't keep baby mode. They gave you the actual Japanese.
I do remember that. Yeah,
awesome.
But that's a phenomenal port or complete redo.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
think the active time battle system became so integral to so many Final Fantasy games down the line, and it really adds frenetic tension to every battle you go in, and they're real,
and other RPGs too. Incorporating that,
and it's they're refining the predetermined classes that characters are based around. You can see characters, based on a specific job class and how they grow, whereas you don't get that so much if you can be any job you want. Like when Tella, that he has this Medio spell that he never has enough MP to cast, and he can't do it until the very end when he has to do it to sacrifice himself. And they say, "Don't do it, dude. You're gonna die." And he's like, "I got to do it." And it just builds up the moment. And I think this is a real mature step. This is the biggest step from FF1. 2 and 3 did some weird things. I don't know. It's almost like Castlevania. Castlevania 2 did some weird things. Castlevania 3 did what the first game did perfectly, and then you made the jump to the Super Nintendo.
Took a step.
Yeah, this was a level up, pun intended.
Yes. Yeah, I think in the whole Final Fantasy series, this was one of the benchmarks through the years, and I'll never forget like the ending. Just being completely blown away. You could have an ending to a game that lasted like 10 minutes, and at that time that was like just unheard of, and I just fucking mind was blown. Usually you just get the end splash screen, and here there's all this exposition. Here's what happened after the story. Yeah. Kane's a fucking great character too.
Yes, you have the next. They went with butts after this. You have a Dark Knight, and then you go to butts.
to butts, the random adventurer.
Yes,
right.
I personally put this one between FF5 and 15 on my ranking as far as what we have now. I appreciated 5 was a little. I like the job system in 5, and I like Gilgamesh as a character. Like just that one character really brought 5 up. Fuck 15, so I would put it between 5 and 15 personally.
I would put it above 8.
I would definitely put it above 8, but I had this one at 5. Again, I know I'm looking through it with some nostalgia glasses in some respect, but again, that's my personal experience with it, and I feel still like this game holds up.
Dylan, what do you think?
Mine. Final Fantasy IV was at number 4 for me.
Put it at number 5 for now. It's the best out of the 4 we've talked about so far.
Agreed. All right, number 5
in a group ranking scenario. I mean,
3 out of 4 podcasters agree that.
I'm not actually offended. I think people who get easily offended are awful. But first of all, I have to show this guy.
Oh, I'm missing it. What?
I'm expecting to be very disappointed in Final Fantasy XII's ranking. Actually, I don't even care either.
Before we get to 12, let's talk about Final Fantasy X.
Oh, no.
Of which
I
don't have any notes, but
Tidus laughs, and Auron is the most badass character ever made. Auron is one of the best character designs of all time.
My all-time favorite Final Fantasy character.
He's as good as Morpheus.
I thought
the best Nomura.
I don't want to do the Final Fantasy VIII shitting party, but I thought that 10 brought the whole love story that Final Fantasy VIII was trying to do, and
I agree.
It kind of made it.
I agree.
I don't know. It kind of did it better.
It's different when you can hear Yuna's voice.
The voice acting made such a huge difference in just the story, and just I think it drew you in a way that you don't have to read through these things, and bringing in the voice acting just made the experience just so much more immersive.
A little uneven, the voice acting, but
I agree.
Definitely very impressive.
On recent revisits to the game, it's like, it's not quite like how I remember it, but.
I think adding voice acting also helps you gather the tone better, because when you just have text, it is such a weird needle to thread that and that's why I think a lot of people didn't like 8, is because a lot of the things Squall says are more realistic to how a person would say it, but it wasn't intoned properly. So a lot of people found him to be a whiny bitch. But if you take him in context of the end of the game and put him forward, I feel like it's a little bit different. But the voice acting made a hell of a difference. I actually don't think Yuna's that bad in terms of early video game voice acting.
Laughing really brings it all down. I think most of the characters, I think Waka and Kamari
that actually is a
great.
charming moment.
I think Riku and Lulu are fine. They're both great.
Yep.
I love Lulu.
Yeah,
Riku's fantastic.
Brought it
Lulu.
all down. I think this game is the most refined classic RPG approach in all Final Fantasy games. It is. It's a pretty game. It's approachable to newcomers, but it's also got a depth that everyone can appreciate. You can switch between party members mid-battle. The conditional turn battle system, where you can view the queue, adds a level of anticipating chess to it, which is fun. It's different. It takes some of that energy out of the ATB, but I liked being able to see the queue and plan ahead.
I don't like the ATB as much as I like getting to actually strategize and choose your next move, like Final Fantasy Tactics style. There's something really beautiful about that, and I wish they'd bring it back. They just know that people aren't as into that, and that's never going to come back again unless they make first of all, the Bravely Default games are the new Final Fantasy X. If you've ever played Bravely Default, those are basically Final Fantasy X with a job system. I mean, those are what Final Fantasy should have evolved
my
into.
My buddy Blake Conroy, I don't know when this game came out, but he literally never played anything outside of shooter games.
2001.
And he got FF10, and he fell into it. And he had me come over, and like we'd have like times where we just like eat pizza and stay up all night. And I had to guide him because it was his first RPG, but he loved it so much because it was approachable to people that were like new to it. I mean, I tricked my buddy into saying it was a sports game, that there would be Blitzball eventually if you play it long enough.
Hey, John Madden, Blitzball is a sport.
2001.
Is his score value higher than the defense?
I will say,
I wish they should make like a Madden game, like Madden RPG. That'd be great.
That would actually, I think that would sell.
The sphere grid was cool. I thought that the random enemy encounters were like egregious in some areas.
They were feeling pretty tired too at this point in the series. It's just like more random battles.
Aren't a lot of,
all right.
Well, the truth.
Yeah, right.
Well, the truth is there aren't a lot of areas. There aren't that many actual environments. There are screens, a lot like your other Final Fantasies, but in this one, they're like people complain about Final Fantasy 13 being a series of hallways. Final Fantasy X is kind of also a series of hallways.
I don't know if it's like. I think the battle system is just a little more fun at first with 10 because 13, I remember distinctly feeling like I was doing nothing. I was slamming X, and then I was running through hallways for way too long. Where 10, I mean, you have Orange show up in the first 5 minutes. You just you put Orange on the screen. I'm like, okay, I'll tap X forever, baby.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I just thought that the story was a little more, I don't know. It's still devolved into the big baddies, threatening the world.
I like that religion is the ultimate bad guy in a way.
Yeah.
I did like.
That's pretty cool. Actually,
I didn't like the final fights against Yevon, but I did like.
I appreciate that though. Just
Jack's
like
fight.
A beaten up ideology that doesn't fight back. It's just like, all right, just put it down. Put that down.
The little amoeba floating, and then you got to like fucking hit some pagodas. I didn't get the correlation there, but I do agree with that, Brad. Yeah.
Well, it's all at the end of it. It's destroying symbolism. It's definitely more of like a Japanese like Shinto style, but it's definitely the destruction of like old ideas.
And I thought it had a pretty satisfying ending too.
One that didn't need a fucking sequel.
No, but what a sequel it was.
Wasn't like the dress spheres of X2?
The boldness of we're opening the next game with a full like pop song where Yuna's dancing and everyone's singing. That was a bad, bold move.
Did you guys play 10-2 all the way through? Okay.
I played the first 30 minutes recently, and
I still don't understand the ending to that game.
You don't need to. Just know that a long time from now, Shinra eventually goes to another planet and starts Midgar.
Anything else on Final Fantasy X? What did you guys? Anything that stands out to you guys that you didn't like or did like profusely?
The sphere grid is really awesome, but eventually everything kind of becomes the same, and that's going to be my main complaint. It's not even a real. Even from the beginning to the middle of the game, there's nothing you can do truly to character customize because you've got to unlock like certain keys to open things, but you can't get them till a certain other point. And while the very like the few of us who are very obsessed with like stats and like changing things around, that we can figure this out, your average person is going to go straight down the line on it. So it's going to be almost basically a standard level up. And that's actually extremely boring. When I first played the game, I'm like, holy shit, look at the size of this thing. You're only going to see about maybe an eighth of that for your first playthrough. And I just found that kind of disappointing. I wanted to see if like Titus could learn kind of a weird alternate thing, or instead of him going the obvious path to get haste.
They were kind of trying to do the best of both worlds, where early on in the game you have defined classes. Yeah. Eventually later on you're able to branch out and more refine them. I think it's also just the fact that you don't have to choose between characters when you go out there. You can swap between them. I really hope the 7 remake does this in the next game because every character has different strengths. Final Fantasy X, I think it's damn near a perfect game, and I put it up very high in my rankings. I won't say how high, but it's above the.
How high is it?
It's above the first.
You should.
It's above.
I actually want to see it on Brad's ranking.
We talked about before this one.
Me too.
Well,
me too. Where would you put it, Dylan?
Mine.
So out of 4,
6.
8, 5, and 15, what would you say it's better than?
It's better than 5 and 15.
Okay,
it's true.
It's not better than 4 or
but
8.
3 out of 4 podcasters say it is better than.
Yeah, you can't take my weight on this. You can take it into consideration, but you guys are essentially like all in agreement that it's a fantastic game. So I can't like.
Okay, yeah, I have it on my list. It is 3 on my list.
I got it at 3 too.
I got it at 2, but it doesn't matter. Just put it above 4, and then we can move them around as we need to.
Let's put it at Final Fantasy X. You are at number 4 currently at the moment.
I propose we talk about Final Fantasy 1.
Let's do it.
Sakaguchi, after making some failed NES games, decides to make Final Fantasy. Why was it the Final Fantasy? Because they liked alliteration. Nobuo Uematsu crapped out a theme song that became the most iconic theme song outside of Mario.
This is like General Patton fucking giving a speech right now.
Amazing. This game is groundbreaking. I love though, like there's a fake out where you think you like beat the end boss, which you kind of do right away, and then it just goes on.
Garland?
Garland. Yeah, Garland.
So did you guys play this as kids on NES?
I beat this originally on my cell phone while managing a movie theater like 7 years ago.
Profusely.
No, I beat it on a cell phone at work. Weird shit.
Okay, so
while masturbating profusely.
Well, that's regardless.
I did play this as a kid on NES back, shortly after it came out, and it sounded awesome. It looked awesome. I think I saw it in Nintendo Power or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't get it. I could not figure it out, and I got slayed by some imps. I don't even think I made it to Garland the first time I tried
imps, man.
Yeah. But revisited it later and like, oh yeah, this is cool. I get this now. But I'm surprised on this one how kind of cool of fantasy and sci-fi elements they all brought into this story, and I think that's what people hopefully get out of it when they play it now. It's just how innovative it was for an RPG for the time.
It's so quintessential as far as the whole Final Fantasy, what you expect from a game. The Warriors of Light, there's a bad guy that eventually becomes a giant fucking demon god. But I love the 4 fiends that you go and have to figure out. There was that NES level of nothing really makes sense and it's kind of obscure. It's not obvious how you're supposed to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I wouldn't have the patience on the NES back in the day. I grabbed a strategy guide very quickly when I was playing this game.
Well, I mean, it came with a strategy guide. It came with like a fucking 88-page manual. Like it says it.
Rented it from Blockbuster. Like that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I suppose. Damn it.
Unless you played Dawn of Souls. 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls is my first introduction to this for the Game Boy Advance. And it was actually a really awesome port. It still looks really good. There's a lot of improvements they made for this one, though, so maybe I'm the worst person to even talk about this because there are a lot more NPCs that give you hints, and they tell you kind of where to go within that. Though I will say that, like, choosing your own party members at the beginning is one of the coolest things that Final Fantasy's ever done. They give you basically D&D roles at the beginning.
Yeah, this is really heavily based in D&D. I mean, the monsters, the type of monsters that they roll out, the fact that the magic system is based on, like, you can learn a certain number of spells, not an MP pool to draw from.
Yeah.
A lot of D&D parallels.
A lot of D&D, a lot of Ultima. I think Sakaguchi had been playing a bunch of Ultima too when that shit came out. So he stole some ideas.
There's unfortunately, a lack of story you can have between the characters, though, other than we're the group and this is moving forward. I think that this is
there was none of that.
I kind of think ultimately becomes realized in FF11 or 14, where you have this ability to create a character and then you are the character and you can, like, I don't know, to an extent. It's not story development in a classic way, but at least they're characters that interact with someone and become parties. Yeah.
Right. You're just a pure party.
So it's a very classic, simple RPG that I think does a lot of things wrong and a lot of things right.
Yep, and it saved the company.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, Brad. There's in the NES days, especially, there was a lot of self-imagining you had to do for things you were doing in video games. Like there was a certain thing you had to ascribe to the thing on screen, and it mostly had to do with your imagination.
Have you ever played Atari?
It didn't have a lot to do with what was given to you. Yeah, exactly. I've played Pitfall.
Adventure.
It's not like I believe. Like I remember writing a comic book about the character from Pitfall, just because I had to think of my own story for him. And so, like, that's how I treated Final Fantasy 1. I was like, oh, my monk character, he's, like, from some secluded mountain somewhere. And he was trained by this, like, wise yoga master or something like that. I think there's value to that, but I don't think you can ask that from a modern audience. And I just don't think – they could make something like this again, but
I think we just need to take a
popular.
moment of silence for the fact that for the Nintendo – for this obscure small game company, they got Nobuo Uematsu, Yoshitaka Amano, and Hironobu Sakaguchi all together to make what became one of the biggest series of all time. What a moment. What a confluence of powers and talents that you can't predict that. There's like orchestras touring all over the world because of this one game when he crapped out a theme because they needed it real quick. Sakaguchi has gone on to become probably, I think, the most influential RPG designer, I'd say, of all time.
Wow.
He's on a Mount Rushmore.
In recent years,
not in recent
so much.
years, but as far as defining what that video game style means, it is absolutely mind-boggling. Amano, I've been just looking at all of his stuff all day. I need to get his art books and all of the monster designs for like the original 6 games. Like they were mostly all designed by him. The characters almost all designed by him. Final Fantasy 1 is a perfect mess of a game. I personally, I put it around like number 6 or 7. I put it below 10 and above 4 as far as our rankings go right now. But it could be anywhere. You know, it's not a great game. It's not approachable, but it's just so important for what it established to me.
Yeah, I kind of like Jake. I never got into it. My buddy had it. I tried playing it a couple times. That was before I could really understand role-playing games, so maybe that's on me. But yeah, for some reason, it just didn't stick with me.
Yeah, and my big thing with 1 is just, there's not much left of this game other than a cool fantasy story to call it a Final Fantasy game, and the theme song, maybe some crystals and Marlboro.
Either way is right. Marlboro Red.
Marlboro.
Yeah,
yes.
There you go.
You're Marlboro man.
So yeah,
I prefer monumental.
A story with 0 PC character depth and basically a fetch quest storyline to get through. There's very little that retains what Final Fantasy is today. So I don't know. I had it lower on my list. I had it at 12.
It's like the Model T is still an influential car.
That's very.
Even if it's not the best,
No, but this isn't for me. The way I wrote the list is what's playable now. I thought about games that are like something you could revisit and go back to. So I was thinking of it like as a video game reviewer. What holds up? Not your memory. Your memory is something completely different. What's great to play right now? Because I played a lot of these, and some of them are not worth going back to. I think 1 is one of them. Mine was placed
if
at
we're going
number
strictly
11.
by how playable is it today and not what it means influentially and of this time, that's different. But if we're talking about simply how playable it is,
I mean, obviously it's number 1. Without it, nothing comes after. And everything that you said, Brad, is absolutely right. But
I know I'm with you guys. If it is based strictly on how playable it is today, that's below 15.
I was gonna say That's like all these games.
That game is obtuse. It doesn't make sense. They don't give you anything. But goddamn, I really liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it with a strategy guide
on a bunch
of
asterisks.
So and I completely agree. Mine's number 11.
10. Let's put it below 15 then.
Oh man,
it's below 15.
I think that's fine.
No, it deserves the spot. It's because they made better games. You're feeling bad for them.
This is
that's not something to like lament.
According to the rules
they
we have going,
games.
That's where it belongs.
At 10,
it doesn't matter.
It's
we'll
below
move around.
15.
It's below 15 somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
I put it at 11. I feel like it's a good spot for it because the worst is.
Let's talk about Final Fantasy 13, everybody. Or are you gonna say Final Fantasy 2?
Oh my! They're.
Well, let's talk about 13 then.
Let's do 13. Yeah.
This is a corridor simulator that came out. I just love that.
Not
people
necessarily. I will make a point for 13. I think it was an obviously rushed video game.
It only took them 10 years,
I also think, I know. That's not even the issue with it. The issue is that they expect you to have this huge buy-in for something that pays off halfway through the game. And by the time I had gotten there, I just wanted to get it.
But it gets better after 40 hours, man.
I'd argue that it even pays off. I mean, by that time, it's kind of too late, and it's really just once you get on Grand Pulse, it's a side quest zone. It's not open world really. You're big.
I know.
You're in a big corridor.
But like, if you get absorbed into
reviews
it's
say,
fantastic.
Just wait 20 hours, it'll pick up. Fuck everything about that.
No,
that's where that meme came
game.
from. Is this
that's
game.
a bad video game.
In its defense, I will say that I actually like the battle system a lot. It was the first Final Fantasy game that I played where I couldn't wait to get away from the story and get into the battles. Like every game to that point, it was like, okay, let's get this.
That's not a positive, Tom. That's not a positive.
You're saying the story is so bad?
It was a backhanded compliment.
13's
You
gameplay.
Neg, you just negged this video game.
I still think the paradigm system was good.
Just negged it. It's like you look great in this, but your tits are a little
absolutely.
fat.
I mean, and this is the only praise I'm going to give the fucking game. But I do like that battle system, and I hope they bring it back for some other game.
No,
Paradigm
why?
shifts.
Oh, I loved it.
It wasn't that good.
I loved it. Yeah, I like the that dynamic based on the staggering.
You just like vanille.
Yeah.
Should
we talk? So, is there anybody who like this game at all on this podcast right now?
I played it all the way through and I didn't give up.
Same here.
I couldn't last 3 hours.
I liked 13-2 a lot more for what it's worth.
Okay.
And you played that why?
Because I don't know.
Because it's Final Fantasy, and I have to buy every fucking thing that says Final Fantasy.
I needed to do something else, and I had 13-2. Mm-hmm. So it was 13-2. I thought was actually kind of cool. They did a lot of different things in that game.
Did you play Lightning Returns at all?
Some of it. Again,
okay.
I couldn't get into it. I played a few hours and eventually lost interest.
I think there was a moment in time where I contemplated getting that game, and then I'm like, what? Yeah, just the linearity of the fucking story from a series that is known for sometimes getting up its own ass. This was just the worst. Like Falsi, fuck me.
And the names too. They just started flipping to different words in the dictionary here.
Let's just go to word generator
and hope and snow and lightning. And
hey, get to the end of the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC. And you're not going to think it's so stupid now.
So you're going to put this below Final Fantasy 1?
Some of the worst characters ever. I think Hope ranks as the worst, and Vanille. I think they both deserve each other in hell.
I found Hope at least generally realistic for a character who his mom got sacrificed by some dipshit because moms are tough.
To be that whiny.
I don't know.
A lot of people lose parents.
If you were Tom, I challenge you. To not be a whiny bitch in that situation. He's like, what?
Well, I mean,
years
every
old?
Final Fantasy character is historically 12 years old if you look at the fucking manuals. It's kind of bonkers how young they all are. Quistis is 18 and Squall is 17, and they're selling her as your teacher. I'm like, wait, what? Whatever. She's the hot teacher who she's cast as, and she's 18. Yeah. She's younger than every teacher I've ever had. Side note, back to this game.
Yeah, but that's a mercenary institution.
You're a mercenary
and she had high scores. She's not actually they're not actually in school. They're being trained to be mercenaries.
It's weird to have a crush on my the teacher persona, and she's only 18. I felt weird about it.
Well, you should play Persona 5.
What's weird, that makes it more accessible. Like, if you're 17 years old and you have a crush on an 18-year-old, that's not
And as it turns out, you grew up with her your whole life anyway.
Yeah. And I think the thing going back to the characters, I think the thing that pissed me off the most, and I think I mentioned this to you, Brad, in the past, was the fact that I hated these fucking characters, but they were so effective as party members. You know, like I had to rely on them, even though I just wanted to fucking kick their ass to the curb and like never use them. Anyways, that's 13.
It looked pretty, right?
It looked very pretty before I turned it off.
Yep.
And this was the game where I lost my save halfway through, and I still replayed it again halfway through to get to the end.
Tommy.
Oh no, Tom. Were you that bored?
It was a slow time for games, and you know, it was Final Fantasy,
never that
man.
slow. It was never that slow.
2010 was.
Think of every Final Fantasy before this you didn't play instead of this one.
I know. I can't. This time I'll never get back. On my deathbed.
Could have been playing that, or you could have just selected three. You could have selected them in 3 different jobs, like healer, commando, and blah blah blah.
Or chose
not
3
even
random
paid attention to
Nickelodeon
the
games
screen.
out of the bargain bin, and one of them would have been better.
I could have been playing Sneak King.
Nintendo, or like
Tom.
Yeah, you could have actually. That's actually not a bad video game.
Okay, I actually had this above 15. I had it at 8, but I had that above all the games I didn't really play. So besides one, this was definitely low.
Yeah, I've got this one
feeling
at
low.
10. Again, I originally had it at 12 and bumped it up just because.
Yeah. I did like the battle system.
I put this at 234, but since we're only at 13 we can rank right now, I'm putting it at 13. I have a problem with that.
Mine's
we're
12.
not doing the online games because I think they deserve a spot. This is the.
I would if we did 14. I could reinsert.
I will say 13
in
is what I consider the worst Final Fantasy main series game. I would rather play 2 and be confused and think that level system is stupid and the attributes are stupid. I would prefer that to 13's shenanigans. I didn't care for it. I would rather have a Nintendo game that was weird because I enjoy playing weird Nintendo games.
Would you'd put it above a game that you didn't play?
I've beaten Final Fantasy 2.
Okay,
and I hate 2.
So,
2 is number 12 for me. 13 is below it.
Wow. Okay, so I think ours are flipped then. So my 13 is second to
Regardless,
last, and 2 is my
13
last.
is below Final Fantasy 1 in our rankings. I think everyone agrees except Tom.
I agree. I just didn't know where to put all the games that I didn't play. So,
and I'll have the same thing with 12, but we're doing this as a group, so I think it's only fair to include everything that anyone's played if it's got a number. Now my whole entire list is whatever.
Before I think we take a quick break, I think that we should have Dylan rank the 2 online games. Give a 2-minute description. A 2-minute description on why one is better than the other.
Okay. First of all, I have played a little bit of 11. I found it inaccessible and weird. Final Fantasy XIV, after its patches and after its reboot, essentially, it became something so accessible that anyone who's never played a JRPG or an MMO can actually get into it. Now, your opinion on MMO mechanics will vary, and I think that this is a game meant to be played over days and hours and months at a time. And I think that your ticket, essentially, how much you're willing to actually buy into this, is actually probably the most important part. Now, I've played the game extensively. I am probably 140 hours into the game, and I'm not done with Stormblood. And I still have yet to get into Shadowbringers, which is right after that. And as much as I enjoy it, I find playing with other people sometimes horrendous and horrible. If you don't like playing with people, do not do this.
But you go to weddings sometimes.
There's some great weddings. I've crashed a few.
Yes, but if you cannot handle people making fun of you, and if you can't handle high-stress situations, because a lot of these are pretty tight in terms of your timing. So if there's an attack that happens and you don't heal properly, or you don't activate a certain move after another attack, you're fucked. Everyone's going to boot you, and then you wasted maybe 20 minutes of your
11?
life.
Can we agree as a group where we want to just put these at 9 or 10 or something, just lock them into a spot? Because I want all 15 series ranked.
Let's get our main ranking and then insert them after that. Does that work?
Yeah, as long as we can just drop those in like 14, 11, we'll drop them in the middle somewhere.
I had planned on actually asking Dylan at the end as where he would put them.
I did it because I didn't think you were gonna. Because I care about Dylan's online experiences.
Well, I mean, it's a mainline title.
We have only 13, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, I think 14, especially once you reach Heavensward, the story is actually worth something.
I heard that, yeah.
Can we take a quick break? I'm gonna re-up. Let's re-up on beers.
Sounds good.
All together now.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Dunn, and I'm inviting you to listen to Our 3 Cents, a weekly podcast where myself and two of my very best gaming chums are counting down our top 100 favourite video games of all time. For all the episodes and information, check out our website, www.our3cents.co.uk.
Matt, I've got a great idea for a podcast. You and me, we watch movies, right? And some of them are kind of bad, and so we make fun of them. But maybe some of them are good.
Chris, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And eat snacks. Movie Fighters, an original idea on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
Sure. And welcome back. This is Tom. I'm from the Dogcast.
And the fart.
We do this every time, Jake.
Guys, this is getting so old.
Love it.
Okay, so where we left off, we left off with Dylan ranking
14 above 11.
The 14 above 11 for the MMO games. More to come on that. So let's continue on. We have ranked officially
10, 4, 8, 5, 15, 1, and 13 is our current order.
That is correct.
Tactics is still number 1 overall, but we're not including it.
I was going to say Chrono Trigger, but whatever.
That as well.
So,
might as well.
Dylan, where do you want to go now? Choose your choice.
All right. Well, let's get it out of the way. 3.
Okay.
I think 3 is fine, especially first of all, most people played this for the first time on the DS remake. That is not crazy to say. Unless you had like weird emulators and a translation, you were not playing it otherwise. Final Fantasy 3 is a fine video game. It is fine. It is so fine that it's
adequate,
completely fine. Right.
But Dylan, when you say fine, sometimes fine means shit.
Fine means
there's a lot of nuance when Dylan says fine.
Because if I think something is, if I think
like,
fine
damn, my
is
girlfriend's
fine.
Is it fine or
exactly.
fine?
Final Fantasy 3 did introduce the job system where you could change between jobs. That's where the crystals came from. It's whatever, but it's also an important something that happened in the series. Some of my favorite games use the job system in very integral ways. I played the DS version. I prefer the original NES version, though, or the Famicom.
Did you play?
I played the DS version, but after playing that, I realized how much I would have preferred the aesthetic of the Famicom, the NES instead, because I don't care for those weird, wonky 3D DS characters. I would have preferred that classic hardcore NES aesthetic. I really did appreciate that with 1 and 2. Summoners.
I actually played this on mobile.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people did. If you didn't have it on DS,
this is the only Ouya release on Final Fantasy. Important to note.
Really? Oh shit. Okay.
I mean, Ouya was only mobile ports. Let's make it
fine.
Ouya, baby.
The Summoner class and summons were introduced in this game. Moo-gals.
Fucking Moo-gals
were introduced.
Fucking Moo-gals.
Fat Chocobos, submarines. There was some cool stuff, but I mean, overall, it just seemed like they didn't know what else to do with the Final Fantasy games at this point. So they did. The job system was new.
No. I don't think that's true, because I think the job system was a complete revolution for the time. There's only so much you can do with the NES hardware to begin with, but I think that they actually. I think in pushing the system, they gave you a ton of ways to customize yourself. I don't think that was bad. I just don't think it holds up.
Stories, some more classic RPG schlock. Nothing's wrong with it, but nothing's good about it. And
orphans fall down a hole and become warriors of light.
There's a bad guy. Turns out there's a bigger bad guy that's called the Cloud of Darkness. Ooh. Oh, no.
And she's really sexy in Dissidia.
Yeah.
So that's why we're ranking it number 1.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, story-wise.
Oh man, are we gonna rate the babes?
That's a Raw Dogs episode.
1998. Is it 1998? Yeah.
Tom will have to be on that.
Also be
what? Story-wise, I have a note here that says it's definitely longer than the first two.
Definitely, yeah.
For better or worse, I guess. But this is where Final Fantasy got a little more epic in scope.
Yes. Essentially, you're on a floating continent, and you think that you're about to play through the entire map until it's revealed that there is a land down below that's trapped in time. And you have to basically go to each of these shrines and awaken each crystal in order to defeat the darkness, which... whatever.
The fucking darkness.
But it was pretty cool at the time, I imagine, to have that kind of plot twist. Like, this isn't the end. Congratulations. There's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
You only went through about a third of the game.
Mordor,
that's really cool.
Do kind of some of that as well.
Final Fantasy 7. Oh, there's more game after Midgard?
Wait.
Come on.
You have to wait 3 more years before we release it. I personally put Final Fantasy 3, I would put it between 15 and 1. That's just where I would put it.
13 and 1?
Between Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 1.
That's actually exactly
that's
where
I
I
would put it myself. It's not great, but
10?
it's fine.
I put it at number 9.
All right. You and Brad need to rock, paper, scissors.
Doesn't matter. We're going to move things around if we need to. Just throw it somewhere.
We're going to move it around because we're going to have to put these up against each other. Put it in that general area. Right. It won't matter.
Baby.
I like it when you call me baby.
All right,
Tom.
we're getting towards some heavier hitters here.
All right, let's do Final Fantasy 12. Let me start off by saying this is personally my favorite game in the series. That's not everybody's. The gameplay is not traditional. It's got an offline MMO RPG feel to it. No random battles. The way you kind of approach like battlefields with the Gambit system is very different. Now, I love setting up that conditional, if this, then that system, 1 through 15. I think that is my favorite way to approach a battle. It's real planning ahead. This was in development hell for a long time. Now, if Bosch would have been the main character like they were originally thinking, this game would be stronger. That would have been like an Auron-type character in the lead. They decided later on that we need to have like a pretty boy who doesn't have muscular arms. That's why they brought Vaughn in. And the game is weaker because of that. I couldn't even tell you the end of the game. I don't know what all happens. The gameplay is so fun, though, and exploring Ivalice with the Gambit system, with Balthier and Fran, dungeon diving, doing the quests with like the monster hunting.
Monster hunting was awesome in this game.
Oh, yes.
So good. I definitely put in more than 100 hours in this game and totally agree that how refreshing the battle felt.
Can I give us a special guest for a moment?
Oh.
Hey, Allie, can you come in here quick?
It felt so great to, like you said, set up those gambits, walk around the world, and just have everything so smooth. It just felt like you were in this world, and you weren't having to make way into different, segments to have battle and do everything else. It just was completely immersive and felt awesome.
Hi, Allie.
Allie.
Hello.
Welcome to the Dogcast.
Allie, why is Final Fantasy 12 the best Final Fantasy game?
One of the reasons I like it is, even though you're playing as Vaughn originally, he's not the main character of the story. But I don't know. I really enjoy the battle system. And rather than having mini games, it's like a bunch of hunts, I think is what they call them. Just just different dynamic. I think that's the longest I've ever played a Final Fantasy game. I think it was like 120 hours I put into it.
Who's your favorite character?
Yeah.
Besides Balthier?
Probably Bosch or his brother.
Gabranth, yes.
I think it was Gabranth.
Judge Gabranth.
Yeah. So probably those guys.
And I don't even really view Vaughn as the main character. I mean, you do start with him, and so
I agree.
So you maybe get latched onto his story a little bit more, but
this was like
story out. pretty evenly.
I wish Final Fantasy games would do this more, where there is someone who you start off with, but there's not a strong emphasis on them as the main character. I love that you start off as Vaughn, but from then on, you can choose any character to be the one you run around as. Mm-hmm. Why not?
Yeah.
If I could just play all of Final Fantasy VI as Umaru, that'd be great. I'll be the Abominable Snowman, you know?
And I think that was one of the things that I thought was really refreshing about this game was the story. The fact that it was more like Lord of the Rings, kind of like a fellowship, just cast of characters rather than the standout lead character. But also the fact that the story that you were on, the arc, it's kind of like a smaller segment of this overarching war that's, going on. It wasn't like the whole world was going to be destroyed like every Final Fantasy that came before that. It always culminated in this big thing that was going to destroy the world.
More politically driven, character driven.
Yeah, totally. It had a Star Wars vibe. I
think that was one of the pros and cons of it, because it did throw a lot of names and history kind of at you, which made it a little bit harder to engage with and get into. But once you did, it felt awesome. And can I just say, it was super refreshing to see that a Final Fantasy story could be told where none of the main characters had amnesia. None of them. A little bit of amnesia. Everybody just knew who they were and knew what they wanted to do.
They got woke.
Yeah, I would say this has a very different feel to all the other Final Fantasies. Maybe 10 kind of is a little different as well. Just like the way the story was told and the way it unfolded. But 12, I think, just had the most different storyline.
I agree,
which is what I liked.
I mean, I don't know. Vagrant story came out first.
That's in the Evil East Alliance,
which takes place in the same place.
The Evil East games all have a more politically based story. And you were saying about throwing a bunch of names at you. That's something that I think George R.R. Martin does if you read the Game of Thrones series, the Song of Ice and Fire series. Eventually, it just kind of lends credence to a bigger world. And the more you want to pursue the knowledge, it's there. But when you can't get a voice actor to say Marquis right, and they say Marquis every fucking time, and then Titus laughs. Everyone knows Titus laughs, but Vaughn goes, "I'm Captain Bosch."
Yeah.
There's a really great Mega 64 skit with that, where some dude dresses up as Vaughn and goes into public places and screams it at people. Very good.
I remember that.
Final Fantasy 12, I would place it. Yeah. I mean, personally, it's my favorite, but ultimately, I think it's not as good as 10 or a few others. But I will let the court of public opinion decide here, because I have a very strong feeling about this game.
I don't know. I'm with you. I like the Gambit system a lot. I thought it was... I think they did the best they could to make people understand it, even though it was still maybe a little bit tough to grasp for the mainstream player, but at least right off the bat. But yeah, I really dug that. One thing that I didn't, I guess it's just
thanks, Allie. We love you, Allie.
Thanks, Allie. We love you.
Better in 3D.
Bye, boys.
One thing, level design wise, because they had to accommodate the, no more random battles. You have to see the enemies plus all your characters. It's like every street and every environment was like half a football field wide, So that was kind of, even back in the day, I remember that kind of being like, okay, I see why they have to do this, but at the same time, it's,
I remember that being very cool because, Evil East is like this crazy kind of almost Damascus kind of.
They had a lot of open environments.
This desert world, and everything felt kind of rich and almost like you were reading. Like, the cool thing about 12 is it feels like it's a small story in the scope of a larger story.
That's what I said.
I just feel like when you play like Tactics or Vagrant Story, it just feels like another chapter, which is nice. It's like the Arabian Nights. I still think they could do a lot.
I think
with
Final
Evil
Fantasy 12
should
have 25 sequels, as well as Final Fantasy Tactics, the original, should have 25 sequels.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see.
Advance was fine.
What, you didn't like
Judges
Advance?
Are stupid. Fuck that shit.
Judges
are
the
right.
Judges.
I thought it was cool in the story how...
that's where the Judges come from. Evil East started in
What do you think, Jake?
Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh, no, that was just kind of cool how, you had the Empire and, the Judges, you got to see the inner workings of, hey, I'm taking, Varsa's side, or I'm taking Vane side or whatever, and you kind of have different like
the bad guy's name is Vane.
Yeah, no one saw that coming.
And I'm apathy over here. Okay.
Character-wise, though, because it was such kind of like that fellowship. Outside of Balthier, like none of the characters really stood out.
Balthier and Fran had a good relationship, and then
Fran to an extent.
Bosch von Ronsenberg, like he's the Aron badass. You get it. You save him out of a prison, being persecuted for political crimes he didn't do because of his twin brother.
But he did not do enough badassery to make him like stand out. Like, fuck
Aron
Bosch.
has his arm tucked in his fucking coat the whole time. Of course, he looks like a badass. But what I'm saying is, Vaughn and Pinello bring the entire cast down because they added these characters because they had to try and make it more traditional JRPG. Whereas, I was disappointed to learn that Aron was only 35 years old when I was looking today. I'm almost as old as he is. They should have more.
Where's your gray hair, bitch? It's right there, your beard.
I don't know. I wish that every Final Fantasy character wasn't 16 to 18 years old, generally.
Yeah.
I found out that Aiko
I agree.
Aiko in FF9 is 6
cool.
years old. That's fucking weird.
Yeah, she's 6.
That's crazy.
Apart from all that, 12, I think, does have good characters, but Vaughn and Pinello bring them the fuck down.
Yeah, and especially that opening sequence. Like, one of the things I remember the most is fighting rats in the fucking sewer at the beginning of that game, which is like so
Sewers in any RPG,
and they have you start doing that.
Stop making sewer levels.
What works about it is when Vaughn just sees this badass space pirate come in with his rabbit-eared girlfriend, and you save a prisoner who is the badass general who was locked up. That works from that, but I think originally
you had me at rabbit ears on a girl. More girl rabbit ears.
I don't think Fran could wear less clothing. She's trying. Yeah.
All right, so where would we put
12? I put up at the top, but y'all can decide where you go from there.
I've got it at 2. I had so much fun with this game. I thought it was awesome. I still, there's a period of time where the NFL kind of had the teams and the timeouts in a way that I couldn't watch an NFL game without wanting to play this game because all the timeouts looked like quickenings, just ready to go.
Quickening.
That's funny.
This was the first time that there was that Sid was bad in the story
Theo's
too,
dad.
right?
Yeah, just a fucking ethicite monger.
Yep.
Fucking love.
I never played it all the way through. There are some blind spots for me personally.
I have Zodiac Age on Switch. You're borrowing that shit, my friend. Physically.
Do you have it physically?
Let's get physical.
Oh,
finish 10.
I should have been borrowing this to begin with.
Okay.
So, all right.
I already finished 10.
We'll
I
get
finished
to tomorrow.
10. I beat Sin.
So Jake, you had it at 2. Brad, where do you have it? You had it at 1. Okay. I had it at 6.
Dylan?
I can't rate it. I'm sorry. If I had to put it somewhere,
3.
I would say it's in the top. I would say it's in the top 7.
I'm comfortable putting it above 10.
Let's do it. Were the toughest for me to discern which came before the other.
Jake, you decide.
12 and 10.
Is 12 better than 10? It doesn't either way. It'll go above or below that.
I would say it might
Put
be
it above 10.
All right.
Okay.
Y'all.
All right. Here we go.
That sounds
All
great.
right. I think next though.
Do 9 here because I think that's gonna.
Yep.
Not go in one of the empty spots that we have.
What are your thoughts on Final Fantasy 9, guys?
Super cute game.
I love it. It's my number 1. It's my number 1.
It doesn't do anything first, but it does everything best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is my number 1 as well.
So you're coming off of Squall, who is the worst main character, sad boy, emo bullshit, and you got Zidane, this guy with character. He's got a monkey tail. He's funny. He's exciting to be around.
His name is Zidane.
I was saying
it's
that wrong.
Zidane. Thank you.
And I only found that out not too long ago, so it's okay if you said Zidane, because that's all.
I just know Dylan's a fucking stickler for vocabulary. I love messing with him.
You pedantic bastard.
Yeah, whatever. Nanakai.
Red X3, bitch.
No, this game rules the fucking school. This game, I played it again on the PlayStation. Now, don't play the ports, especially the Switch version. That is a port of the mobile iOS version, which keeps all of the shit that made Final Fantasy IX bad, or like kept it from becoming what it should be, and it just like ugly menus, stuff you can't control, weird loading times. It keeps the weird loading times for some reason I can't even imagine, because Final Fantasy IX came out at a time where the graphics they were going for were pushing the system to
that was kind of like
brink.
PS1 swan song. Like, yeah, you could definitely tell smoke was usually coming out of the PS1 and during that game. When you played
my favorite thing with 9 was equipping different items and armor, and then you get abilities from using them long enough. That was my favorite thing it introduced.
Beautiful.
Apart from that, it has some of the most fun, memorable characters. There's also a lot of duds. There's some duds. I don't think Amaranth was as interesting as people think he was. Freya was great.
Right. Freya was awesome.
Ico was a dud. I'm going to go ahead and
cool.
nominate.
I remember Ico
I actually didn't, and I love 9. I didn't remember Ico much. But
Vivi is
Vivi,
top
and
5
Dagger.
FF characters of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vivi is
I love
so
Vivi.
good.
I get chills talking about
Vivi
Vivi.
is like,
And I'm going to go ahead and nominate as in the top 5
so.
Final Fantasy ladies of all time. Beatrix is S tier class for me.
So good, yes.
I love that eye patch.
And her and
baby.
Steiner, when they
That's
accidentally
sexy.
start reading Ico's love letter, and they start realizing they might have feelings for each other.
Yeah.
So that's some great Final Fantasy fun story shit. It's
Steiner.
Great writing.
That makes me think
great
of 6,
Steiner.
where there's the misdirection and fun character interactions. This video game nails a lot of what makes Final Fantasy fun and unique and great, character-wise, and the rest of it as well. I really do appreciate it.
I think it's like you said, the characters make this game for me. I mean, that's like the number one. And being like an old school like Final Fantasy guy, it was definitely nice to see the marriage of the new style Final Fantasy come together with the old fantasy, chibi-ish characters. Yeah, just so much charm. And they brought back Garland. I thought it was just fucking I love 9.
Pure charm. The opening sequence where like Zidane, whatever. When you're helping
Zidane,
Dagger, you're trying to kidnap her, and you realize she's trying to be kidnapped or escape at the same time.
Please take
and
me
there's
with
a
you.
guy also who looks like a fucking salt shaker. What is going on here?
Yeah,
and Cinna,
Marcus and all of those guys.
Oh, Quina,
you're a part of a theater troupe.
Not sure what to make of Quina.
Oh, come on, Quina rules. Quina rules.
Can you stick it in
Quina
your tongue?
Jake, what are your thoughts on FF9?
I think you guys, hit it right on the head. To me, I think Brad, you said it best. It's stuff that we've kind of seen before, but it did it the best. For me, just. The story was awesome. It was refreshing to see it kind of go back into that fantasy setting. In terms of ranking, I had it ranked under 4, but again, once you get to the top here, it's like any of these they're just squashing into each other. I think this is where it gets tough.
I will say it did most everything as good as everyone, all the other games before, except Triple Triad is a better card game. And
I forgot about the card game.
The Central Master is not as good. And
I wasn't even thinking about it. When I ranked.
Was playing these PlayStation games back in the day and buying strategy guides. The PlayStation, the Play Online strategy guide for this game was so bad, I'm dropping it an extra ranking, because literally everything in the strategy guide said.
Because you couldn't cheat properly.
The fact that to get Excalibur 2, you have to not do certain things. They design these games to need strategy guides or need online things, and that's the fucking truth, Dylan. Final Fantasy 1. Beat Final Fantasy 1 without a
Let's be honest here.
Who what's great? And with a strategy guide in the first playthrough.
I was watching Final Fantasy 11 documentary earlier, and something they do. No, Dylan.
All
Dylan,
MMOs
what
need
I'm
guides.
saying is,
Are you
what they
crazy?
do that's so great with that game is they're designing the game to be specifically not super approachable, so they have to figure things out and work together online. You have to go to forums. You have to learn together, which is great. And I don't know, with the games like this,
I beat the game without a strategy guide. I had a great time.
But I'm not.
I did too. It was fabulous. I
I'm
beat
not
Ozma.
Fuck,
I beat
motherfucker beat
I'm
Ozma,
not saying
bitch.
you need a strategy guide. I'm saying these games are designed to where you have to have
Who's
a
Ozma?
community and you have to work together. But this strategy guide, I like strategy guides too, and this was shit. This was bad, but
Okay, Brad hates strategy
no,
guides.
I love strategy guides, but
And Final Fantasy 9.
you didn't listen to anything I just said, Tom.
I always listen.
No,
man.
you don't.
No, I understand where you're coming from. There's a ton of people, especially like Allie, who we were just talking to, who loves to go through a game with a guide because it kind of gives them kind of a reference point to go from. The first time I play through a game, I don't really like touching guides unless there's like if I had a guide that told me there's an item here that is completely pivotal to the
What
whole
I
game,
prefer is a
I like
list
that.
of missables.
Like-
if I can't get the Zodiac Spear in Final Fantasy
Yes.
12 without
Yes.
grabbing some random fucking chests, just tell me.
Was that shit in the
absolutely
strategy
right.
guide? Because I'm taking that down if I want.
I don't.
Final Fantasy is so full of missables, so full of things you can just skip over accidentally. Like, here's one thing I'll go against 8 is when you don't draw from certain enemies.
Are you saying you want to drop 8 lower in the rankings?
Congratulations. No, it won't go. It won't go lower. I actually think it encourages drawing more in repeat playthroughs, but for this one, no. I actually think that's. I don't think it's a bad thing, but on your first playthrough, they should be like, hey, maybe you should draw from bosses more. I've already admitted that they don't give you enough instruction in 8, which they give you a ton, but.
All right,
not
so
in the ways
I
that
think
you
we can all
need.
agree Final Fantasy IX has, if not the most, one of the most charming stories in all of Final Fantasy. The story's fun, it's great. It kind of loses its traction with Kuja turning into like not important Ozma.
No,
It's got a charming opening.
I don't think so.
Regardless of this, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Charming ending
Final Fantasy
too.
IX, where are we ranking it? Number 1 of all time.
It's
Number 1.
personal one for me. This is hard. I would definitely. It would be above
To me,
12
a
for me. I mean,
definitive-
it's my like I said, it's personal one.
To me, it's
my personal
it's
and
below 10 and
mechanically
12,
number 1.
but above 4. That's where I would put it. Jake, what do you got?
I can't do that.
Honestly, if I was being honest, that's where I would have ranked it, but I gave 4 the edge just because of my love of that game. And I think, there's all the things that 9 kind of borrowed from 4. I like both of those stories a ton. So
9 was definitely a refinement.
I would feel comfortable putting it above 12 if you guys wanted to. It's so.
I have to.
This is the most Final Fantasy game of all Final Fantasy games. I don't think it's the best, but it is the most.
That soundtrack also doesn't get enough love, and this has Wind Waker syndrome. Let's all be honest. That the art style turned off so many people at the time because they wanted another kind of realistic game, and this was in the edgelord 90s. That when it wasn't Tetsuya Nomura, it was something that was just like completely different. Like, here you go. Here's like this really charming art style, which they actually translated.
Final Fantasy 9 actually did come out in 2000, though.
Yep, the PlayStation 2 came out.
But it's still the edgelord 90s. Because it was
a lot of people were
designed in the
playing this
90s.
game on their PS2.
The director was Hiroyuki Ito, though, who is
so for me,
one of the founding members of like the Final
He's very
Fantasy
good.
team.
Yeah, he did 6.
I am in complete agreement with you, Dylan.
Okay, so
Let's put it up above
Now,
12, in my opinion.
I have to. This game completely charmed me. There was an entire summer where I 100%ed it.
all right. I mean,
This is the only game I have 100%ed the game. I even got Excalibur 2.
Well, shit. That is
In
a
that
shit.
case.
That is a speed run the game to get
All
a
right.
certain item.
so are we saying 2, or are we bringing other ones
It
down?
doesn't matter. You put it
Or-
at 2. We'll move things around if we need to. It's more about where it is in relevance to what we talked about.
Because everything is going to become what has to face what. Because we just talked about a bunch
All
of
right.
games.
So
The rest is the
we have
argument.
3 left. We have Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 6, and Final Fantasy 7. So let's get 2 out of the way.
Who's next?
2 is one of the worst. It's the first
one of
one
the worst.
with main characters, with names. There is a
Chocobos.
They introduced...
Yes. Oh, you don't like Furion?
I mean, they introduced characters that the story built around, but it also, the attributes level up by using the characters. It's a wonky system. This is the precursor. This is the precursor to Ramza kind of throwing 1,000,000 rocks at 1,000,000 friends in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Which, if you do it enough at your
there we go,
your calculator.
Something else that I think is overlooked about FF2 is that they introduced key terms in dialogue trees, where you have to memorize those and speak to certain characters and reference them. Apart from that, it sucks. It's not great.
No, I think they were trying to be, interactive and engaging with it, but it just was kind of a super cumbersome way to have conversations in the game.
Miscalculation.
It's like how I bring up beer in every conversation. It doesn't work all the time.
Excuse me, do you like IPAs?
No.
No. I was gonna say. I think this one. I think what they had going for them was really cool. Like, I like the idea that if you get hit more by rocks or blah blah blah, if you get attacked more, your defense would go up if you can survive it. I think there's something really cool about that idea. I just think implementation of that is. It's really hard to find a balance between how you can heal yourself and how you can deal damage or anything else. It is such a, I keep saying it, it's threading the needle. If you cannot have that kind of balance, you can completely break the system, which is one thing I can say against 8 again. But it's like if you get the right magic, you can completely break 8. But that's what's cool about it.
Am I thinking of Morrowind or Oblivion, where you could just jump forever to raise your athletics?
Yes.
Or acrobatics.
You can
both.
Right, and then you can eventually walk across water.
There's a point where the systems can be refined or they break into oblivion. And Final Fantasy II tried to do some really fun, exciting, weird things that doesn't work, but they also...
But they tried.
They introduced main characters in the game, which they're making a big move story-wise. I also beat this game on a cell phone in a movie theater while watching Twilight Eclipse to make sure it was running fine and no one was texting, because that was my job at the time. I also watched, there's a Frankenstein movie. I forget what it was. If you remember that, tweet at Loaf of White Brad. Who gives a shit? I would rank this.
Dylan got so angry
I would
he
rank
left.
this above FF13 and below everything else.
All right, Final Fantasy II. I'm going off of you guys because I did not play it. Jake, you play it?
No, not really. Just familiar with it, and I guess 13 and 2 were kind of flip floppy for me. And anything in the bottom here is anything in the bottom or anything in the top really is just kind of fair game to go.
Yeah.
Other than my number one, I don't know that I can make an argument for any other game, taking that spot, but certainly 2 through 5 or something like that for me. It's I don't know. Any given day, I could have a different answer to this thing.
Yeah, same here. For me,
that's why I would put Lightning Returns above
much.
Final Fantasy VI.
That timer mechanics.
The Hobbit is a million times better than the Two Towers.
I hope not.
But honestly, where did we put Final Fantasy II?
I would have loved to have seen
Final Fantasy II, Brad, we put at number 12, just above Final Fantasy 13 as rounding out the bottom of the
Jake,
list.
what are we talking about next?
Well, I would agree with that.
Well, I think we said that we were going to talk about Final Fantasy VII last, right? So we're talking about...
We got 6 and 7 last.
# no spoilers. Spoilers. My number one game, Final Fantasy VI.
There you go.
There is not much bad to say about this game. I can't say, I don't know, maybe it's not that difficult. Maybe you can call that a negative. I think I don't know, it's great. For the time, and I think a lot of the takes, may differ on when you played these games. I think that goes for every title in the series, honestly. After playing Final Fantasy IV, I was so looking forward to this game coming out, and it did not disappoint in any ways. It just amped everything up, did everything better. More characters that were better fleshed out in a cooler world.
14 main characters.
14 main characters and added secret characters in there as well, which was a first. and it really passed off the baton, between these characters too, and you're just drawn to all of their stories. They were told so well. The bad guy Kefka. I mean, what can you say?
My favorite villain of all time.
I would like to propose
watch the world burn guy.
I'd like to propose an alternate universe where, let's imagine Final Fantasy VII was an SNES release and 6 came out as the first PS1 release. I think they are equal in how important they are, because I mean, FF6 introduced that steampunk aesthetic, which became something. It wasn't the first like super sci-fi Final Fantasy game, but it is the first one that just like we are leaning in heavy into it.
They leaned into it hard, yes.
The characters were so integral to the experience. I think Kefka is a better villain than Sephiroth. They're both great, but fucking Kefka, I've seen people.
He's not a whiny bitch.
I've seen people describe him as a better version of the Joker.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah,
better version of the Joker. That's absolutely. That's
I think
pretty
the fact
spot on.
that he, for a year of game time, he wins. He gets it.
What a fucking revelation that plot twist was. Fucking great.
Okay, I've got a question for you guys. Now, this is a little bit BuzzFeedy, but I think it'll tell a lot about our personalities. Who is your favorite Final Fantasy VI character? Because I've got one. It explains a lot about me. Who do you think it might be?
Locke.
I like Locke.
Locke's great.
Locke is my favorite.
I kind of related a little bit to Edgar and liked him. I'm an engineer, so I'm an older brother, and just the whole like relationship between him and Seven, and going their different paths in life. It
explains a lot, actually.
Here's what I'm gonna say. Like, everyone has like a preferred. They have a feeling about a certain character, and then that becomes their main character, because 6 doesn't really have one. If you consider Terra a main character, congratulations, you're wrong, because halfway through the game it switches mostly to Celeste, and then you have the whole thing where she's on that island with Sid.
Yes.
And she contemplates killing herself.
Oh my god,
it's fucking great.
Absolutely,
and she tries.
She throws herself off the cliff.
She does.
If there's any single weak point I could possibly say about this game, it's that the one time that they do have a female main character, they don't lean in heavy into that as the main character of the game. I'm with everyone that. Whoever your character you want to be should be the main character, but it's cool that it is the first female main character that is, canonically, like, it's about Terra.
Right.
I think the core. It's such a strong cast, though, that you can't say she is the main character, but the fact that...
And there are a ton of female characters in that are super approachable and different, that I don't think that you can take away from its like feminist attitude. I think in total, like, they don't, like, some characters approach Terra like, oh, you're a lady, you can't do this, and she's like, actually I can. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. And she proves it, and then eventually they're like, actually, yeah, she's fine. Who gives a shit? Unless you're Locke, because he's got a weird thing for his comatose girlfriend.
I mean, Dylan, I picked you totally as a Setzer, but
Setzer is my favorite.
You saw me as a Setzer? That's a compliment.
But let's talk about like the breadth of the cast and the fact that they're well thought out and fleshed out, and the fact that this is an SNES game.
Yeah.
What's that?
Except for the snowman, at least Mog is in charge of the snowman.
You mean Umaru? Yeah. Okay,
I called him Umaru
top of my head,
5 fucking times
shows how much
before.
Good job,
Dylan, motherfucker.
I don't care. I wasn't paying attention.
Right. Okay. So, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy VII and probably some iconic scene in that game.
It's when you meet Umaru.
Right.
Yeah.
But
my favorite scene, hands down, in 6 has got to be Opera House.
The opera scene, absolutely.
It just totally, like, the first time I played it, I was just like floored at what was going on screen. And
Yes.
I was very fortunate.
I know
same
it
here.
blew me away. I even playing it in the mid 2000s.
I was very fortunate to go to see
me.
Distant Worlds live before, and they did the full version of the opera, the extended version with live people singing lyrics that were added.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And someone was like even narrating in between what they were singing, what was going on. Fantastic.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yes. It's great that Nobuo Uematsu can also take these prior songs that he did for 8-bit or 16-bit and expand upon them and really show what he was trying to convey in a full orchestra.
Yeah.
But yeah, the opera. So
Well,
good.
especially for
No,
that
opera's
song.
so good. Dylan.
Go for it. Well, especially for that song in particular, there are like several different incarnations of it, and I've actually done a lot of research because I love this part of the game so much, and I think the story that they're telling actually mimics the plot of the game very well. I think that there's this part where, especially where the fact that you have to have one character mimicking the other, that Celeste is trying to be Terra, and Terra is also trying to be Celeste in a lot of ways. And then there's like this whole idea of this other kingdom and King Draco and like this rebellion, and like the failure of them is the failure of her to actually get her love back. And the entire motif is trapped within that part of the opera, and it's basically telling you what the future holds. And when you listen to it, Nobuo Uematsu has a band called the Black Mages. I don't know if you guys ever knew that.
I listened to Raw Dogs.
Okay. And they have a version of this entire song called Darkness and Starlight, and it is so fucking good. And they rip it to shreds. There's another one I'm gonna send to Brad later. There is someone who just on his own reorchestrated it and synthesized all the orchestration for Kefka's Dancing Mad and this.
Unfortunately,
it is
Black
fantastic.
Mages last show was in 2010. Dude,
Fuck you,
Nobuo
coronavirus.
Uematsu just
Fucking Corona.
dude.
Goddamn
the
the
fact
Corona.
that Nobuo can still just go, or Uematsu-san, however you want to say it, can just go out and fucking rock.
Yeah.
Because he has mentioned before, even with Final Fantasy VI, he was inspired by Rush for some songs, and you can see it where you just have like these crazy long piano, not solos, but piano sections for Dancing Mad. That final battle, that 3-tiered battle where it keeps getting elevated and 4-tiered battle.
What I think we're saying here, just in a roundabout way, is Final Fantasy VI has the best Final Fantasy soundtrack.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm gonna have to flip my choices here. I really think that 9 and 6 need to be flipped. I just thought about it, and I'm just convinced. 6 is number 1.
Yeah. 6
is number 1.
Yes.
I love 6.
6 is the
and
highest
9 is now number
so
3.
far
Fuck you,
out of
Dylan.
What we've done. I'm not saying it's the best soundtrack. Oh god,
The soundtrack is so great.
I think it's iconic.
It is so good. I mean, this was the easiest decision I had on the list to put it at number 1. 2 through 6 to me are Any Given Day. I can flip that around. Number 1. I mean, this one just holds a special place in gaming for me.
I think all around it is the strongest.
I think you're right, though.
The fandom train, motherfucker.
I will say a
The
few things
fandom
against
train.
it. I will say a few things against 6, and 6 has a few problems. It all stems back to character abilities. So you know how everyone has their own little thing that they can do, like Locke can steal, and like Sabine can do his like judo throws and shit like that. So a lot of those become almost immediately useless. They become useful for a part of the game, but then after another point, they become absolutely useless. Unless you're talking like Edgar's like machines, like there's really nothing else that's actually going to, like the rune ability with Celeste. Yeah, whatever.
Right.
It does
You
nothing.
never really use
Some characters you'll never use with that system.
You do it for one part. Unless you're that good at the game, you're not going to use her ability properly. So I'm thinking like, well, even like Gao. Gao is one of my favorite Final Fantasy characters because he's super interesting. You go onto this entire like savannah area and he jumps on them, and he after a while, if you battle enough, he gains their ability and jumps back.
Right.
He's like a weird blue mage, which is awesome. I think that's really cool.
Dylan?
However, it's inconsistent.
Dylan, where would you
and
rank
I don't think
this
it works.
out of all of them?
I'm honestly replacing this with 9 as my first because I have way too many memories with this one above the
on your personal
9.
list.
9
we can
is
have
now
the
my number
Dogcast list
3.
and the personal list be separate.
But, okay, so Dylan says it's above 9. Tom?
It's above 9.
Above
Tom,
9?
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah.
That sounds.
I figured it was going to be between this and 7, and
So this is above
Look into
9.
his eyes.
I would give it
that.
to 6 all day.
Okay,
I mean,
Jake, is this above 9?
Yes.
All right. So our list before we go. Well, let's agree where we want to put FF 14 and then 11. No, no, it's not. This is up to
all
us
to
three
me,
outside
though.
of you because you ranked them. I put it before. I put it at 8. I put them at
14's
8,
better
9
than 11.
before, or like under FF5 and above FF15. Well,
You haven't
we have to
touched
decide
them.
where we're putting the online games. Us non-3 online
I think
players.
we gotta have Dylan weigh in on where they go because
he's
I've
the only
heard-
guy. He's our
Everything
clutch.
that I've heard is the remake of 14 after they totally retooled that is actually a really engaging game.
That's the craziest part about 14 is that it's a live service. Like a lot of video games these days, this is going to change. But Shadowbringers,
We're at like
I've
2
seen
hours
enough.
and 15 minutes.
Like I got into a lot of that
I'd say
content.
throw 14 and 11 back to backs. Where would you throw them on this list? We'll go with you. I was thinking 8 and 9.
7, 8.
You put him back to back?
I don't know that they deserve to be back to back.
Yeah.
It's not better than Final Fantasy VIII. How
8's
far
at
back
number
is
6
8?
right
6.
now.
Final Fantasy VIII.
I mean, well,
So we're gonna put that at number 8 then. Final Fantasy
I didn't
14
put it-
can be number 8. Final Fantasy 11 can be
well,
number
hold on.
11.
I didn't put in Final
as far
Fantasy
as I'm
6.
concerned.
I mean, where are we
We're
putting?
putting 6 above 9.
If it's above 9 right now, it's going to be at number
Where
1.
is 6?
Number 1, yeah.
But I think we need to include 11 and 14 on this list.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they can be fine back to back. We just agree where online ranks in the importance of everything else.
Because one is a product and the other one is something that is completely
Tell you what,
evolutionary.
let's talk about Final Fantasy 7, and while we're doing that, Dylan can deliberate in his head
we need
where
to
11
decide.
and 14
That's
go.
last. We decide last. What is the
Why?
I'm ready. Let's just throw 11 and 14 somewhere before we get into the big one.
I don't think Final Fantasy 7 is the most final. This is the most important Final Fantasy. I'm just going to say that out there. I think it's
let's just put 11 and 14 somewhere before we move on to the last thing.
All right, I'm going to put him at 12 and 13 right now.
I say 8 and 9.
I say 9.
Let's
9's
put it
fine.
between
9
15
I'll
and
agree with.
15 and 3. Let's put 14, 11 there.
Okay.
Look, I had a great time, and I was also the best darn white mage you've ever seen in your goddamn life.
Yep.
I didn't even want to be a white mage. That's a skill I had to acquire, by the way. I wanted
And
to be
then
a
3
healer.
goes down to 12.
It drops down to 12, yep.
And then we have 14, 13 at 10 and 11, and we don't know where 7 falls. I think this is an important discussion because...
You mean 11 and 14?
14, 11 is the order, right? 14's better than 11, right?
11 can
wait,
be right at the end.
14 is better
none of
than
us have
11,
played
right?
these.
Yeah, right.
It's
Our number one
substantially agreed
Patreon
upon.
supporter, Brian
Most people
Ward,
do
will
agree
say
with that.
11 deserves to be above Final Fantasy 3. We're going to go ahead and say that. He
Okay,
just
that's
jumped
fine.
from the
Brian
$5
Ward
to
is a great
$10
subscriber.
supporter.
Yeah.
He has bought the right to put that above FF3. All right, so we have to rank
He's a producer now.
Final Fantasy 7 now. What are your thoughts on FF7?
It's the best-selling Final Fantasy.
That's not what I...
It sold a lot of PlayStations.
That's a fact.
Sold a lot of PlayStations.
Brad,
We've
we
only
have
talked about this for
so
3
many
podcast
days.
episodes so far, but it
Right.
doesn't matter because we talked a lot. It doesn't mean
It was 9 hours.
We don't know where it ranks, you know?
It is. Final Fantasy VII is the reason I bought a PlayStation. I finally jumped over that gorge and did that.
Mine was Tomba.
Yeah, I was blown away by it when it came out, for sure. I really enjoyed it. It was so unique and different from the other Final Fantasies, that they, especially given the fact that they had, the new multimedia, the new platform work on the game. It's Final Fantasy VII, man.
PlayStation release. They jumped Nintendo. This defined game consoles to an extent because it made Sony a major player.
Yeah, this was a huge shakeup.
Yes. The first Final Fantasy with FMVs, with polygons.
Yes.
Yep.
It's very important.
It defined a style for going forward.
I could see this story working, like I was suggesting before, in a 2D format like Final Fantasy VI was. If there was a Switch there, I think if you put 6 in this format in polygons with Kefka, people would be talking about Kefka in the way that we are talking about Sephiroth now.
I honestly think that a 6 remake was way more deserving than a 7 remake.
Oh my god!
If only
that'd be sweet.
It would have been absolutely astonishing. Are you kidding me? Like, this is something people would have actually wanted to see. I'm sorry, we saw the 3D stuff. There was a certain atmosphere. Brad and I talked about this on Raw Dogs, but there's like a Playmobil aesthetic to Final Fantasy VII that almost lends itself to the entire feeling that the series gets. When you take it too seriously, that's when it all falls apart. But you have to be taking these little idiot ding dong Lego characters
like
seriously in order to pull yourself in.
Nintendo Mii's. I mean, they're just like
4 polygons a piece.
Exactly.
But I honestly think,
but it was still mind blowing back in the day.
Yeah.
That aesthetic works.
Yeah.
Having those characters, they don't look great, but they have.
Right.
I relate to them. I understand what Barrett's feeling.
In one way, the lack of detail makes the ability to show expression easier to convey almost by having, the detail stripped out and you kind of get the gist of what they're going through a little bit better.
Yeah, it's like a silent movie.
They stuck to what they needed.
And I think there's a lot going for this game, and I always have. I remember this is maybe the first Final Fantasy I saw, like not a sibling, but like a cousin play, and I was immediately absorbed from moment one. You cannot go past this without understanding how completely unique this was, even in terms of newer games, in terms of storytelling and how they introduced characters and how the pacing worked. I have to give this props for what it is, but what it has ended up becoming, like it's a lot of, I hate to say it, a lot of it is so nostalgia based that it kind of, I'm going to say this, the remake addresses the nostalgia.
I don't think it cheapens it.
I can't cotton to it.
The nostalgia is fine. Final Fantasy VII, for what it is, I think it is the most important Final Fantasy game of all time. As far as cultural effect, I'm not saying it's the best by any stretch of the imagination. For its effect long term on video games and the genre and the industry, this is a defining moment for consoles, for gameplay types. But you're right. I mean, it's not the best RPG. It's not the best Final Fantasy by any stretch of the imagination. But
time and place definitely played a
we'd be
factor.
playing if there was a 6 and 7 Switch, we'd be playing a 6 remake right now, and we'd be gushing about it the same way. And
I know.
And honestly, 6 has a better story.
No, we're not talking about better story. For me, the way I've rated every single one of these things it's not just translation. It's me rating the total package. I've got no problem with any of these things. I love all of these games like they're my fucking children. That's why this has been really hard. But when you are taking everything and you have to contain it in one single package, that's how you're supposed to see things. That's how video game reviewers review video games. And for me, that's how my list went. But when Jake started talking about 6, I started thinking about my sweet baby child that I loved very much. and I started thinking about how much I had in like that final boss battle was, and suddenly I had changed my mind a little. I tweaked it. Now 8's always going to be my baby, but it's never going to be number 1. It's always going to be number 2. It's my middle child. I think a lot of what this list is going to break down to, because we're about to argue pretty substantially after this is set into place. I think a lot of what this breaks down to is personal opinion. If you got a problem with it, email Tom.
I don't know. I don't know if there will be a ton of argument.
All your fan mail.
I think at this point, Jake, where would you put Final Fantasy VII in the ranking of all the rest of the Final Fantasies?
Gosh, so on my list, we're not like too far off on the top here. I had it at number 4 on my list, which on my list was under 12 and 10 as well.
I had it at 4.
I personally want to put it at 5, strictly based on what we're talking about gameplay wise and the overall package. I think 10 is more solid, more holds together, and better gameplay experience. I
really?
would put
Brad, I thought you were gonna fucking just go to town for this game.
I love 7. It's not the best game. I have the most nostalgia for it. I made Carter listen to hip hop to Chocobo for fucking forever. That's not just an FF7 thing, but no, I would put this at number 5.
Actually, I had this at 5. I had it at 5. Actually, I was expecting everyone to go against me.
We're all
with
reasonable
this one.
here.
Because we're reasonable, but we're also people who love what we love.
I love Final Fantasy VII
obviously,
too, but I played Final Fantasy VII actually after Final Fantasy X. I never had a PS, and
interesting.
So I played Final Fantasy X before 7. Still was totally engaged in 7. When you get out of Midgar
that first time
and that whole bike scene and everything, I was just like, yes, this is so awesome.
Yeah.
The 3D map thing is a little clunky, and some of the story is, it's scripted misdirection because they kind of know what they're doing and they're playing with
misdirection.
You the whole time.
That's Final Fantasy VII in a nutshell. You're right.
It is.
Now, if you subscribe to our Patreon, you will notice that me and Brad talk about this extensively, and it's true. There are several misdirections, and there are still people that are confused as to which part is right, because usually in storytelling, if you have a misdirection, what you do is you then afterwards explain it, and then that's the truth.
That's how magicians work.
However, there are several.
Yeah. So you just talk about MacGuffins.
Yeah.
It's no, it's not MacGuffins, because MacGuffins is an item that you have to get. All of Final Fantasy
it's
has
the orthopedic panties that we're talking about. That's the item that you need to get in Final Fantasy.
What? They're Mormons?
All right.
What?
So
okay. Yeah.
So we're putting Tom. Where was so 7 is at number 5? Is that what's going on?
Is that what you guys want to do? Because I put 7 above 4.
Not for me.
Where'd 10
I think
go?
4 is better.
No, I moved some stuff around. I shouldn't have touched anything. Can I control Z this?
I'm not even looking at the. I'm not even looking at the
back
list.
before Brad touched anything. All right, so it's below 10 and above 4. I think is the right thing to do.
I feel like that's all right. I mean, there's parts of the parts of 4 I like better. There's parts of 7. I mean, 7 is so immersive in what you can do in that game, in the mini games. It's got some amazing characters you got. A guy with there's 2 guys with gun arms in that game. That's crazy.
But it's also more customizable.
What Brad was mentioning earlier about his friend who played, who didn't play RPGs but played Final Fantasy X.
To have Blake Conroy come over and make me listen to the Besaid Island theme song, and he told me, dude, he's like, have you heard this shit?
Yeah.
I had to burn it on CDs for him because he didn't know how to get it. I had to download a Napster Besaid Island theme song. If you haven't heard it,
but what I was
up there with some of the best songs ever. It's dumb, but he was drawn in.
Yeah, but what I was going to say about that was Final Fantasy VII, when that came out, that was like your friend times 10, because everybody I knew who didn't play RPGs bought fucking Final Fantasy VII because the fucking commercials were just mind-blowing. And
why? The Final Fantasy
was
10 commercials fucking blew me away. I never had a PlayStation 2. Oh my god!
I had friends coming up to me like, "Oh, I didn't know it was like turn-based combat," and then also friends like, "Do you know when you get out of that fucking town, there's a whole other game?" Oh my god!
It's like fuck you,
yeah, that's
dude.
an RPG,
I'm watching
man.
Toy Story. Back off.
Yeah, right. I'm working at a gas station. Here's your free fucking cigarettes.
And meanwhile, Tom is just trying to steal
that one Sega 32X for Doom.
No comment.
All right, so wait.
It was Star Wars Arcade.
7, Tom, let's finish this list over here that we're looking at. So 7 is under 10 and above 4.
Perfect.
Wow, is this it, guys? Is this our final ranking?
Oh, I'm seeing
Tom, would you read the final listing for the ranking of Final Fantasy series as defined by Hair of the Dogcast?
I would love to, Brad. Ladies and gentlemen, rounding out the bottom of the list, Final Fantasy 13. Then 14 is Final Fantasy 2. Moving up to 13, Final Fantasy 1, the original. Number 12 is Final Fantasy 3. Next, we have our MMOs. Number 11 is Final Fantasy 11. Number 10 is Final Fantasy 14.
It's okay, Dylan. Everybody knows they're in a separate ranking regardless.
It's fine.
Yeah. Number 9, we got your Final Fantasy 15. Number 8, Final Fantasy 5. Number 7, Final Fantasy 8. Number dagger into Dylan's heart. Number 6, Final Fantasy 4. Number 5, Final Fantasy 7. Number 4, Final Fantasy 10. Number 3, Final Fantasy 12. Number 2, Final Fantasy 9. And your number 1, Final Fantasy 6.
I don't disagree with the top 5 at all, actually. That's actually
closer than I thought it would be.
Then,
yeah.
No. I'm surprised at how much we agreed. This is I mean, to me, perhaps this is like one of those situations where I misjudged everyone I've actually talked to about this.
Turns out we're more agreeable than you think.
Because it turns out a lot of people run on nostalgia. They don't see things for what they are, and I think that like Final Fantasy VII to a lot of people is like an instant number 1, the same way Ocarina of Time for Legend of Zelda is. And I think that saying that without like giving yourself a retrospective on it is completely childish and stupid. Like it's just like you're allowed to like things.
I was surprised when I was making my list that Final Fantasy X. I thought it was the best. I thought it was almost immediately at the top of the best overall experience before 10. Critical Thought. I was surprised too, though, that 7 wasn't number 1 initially when I was considering it. And I know 12 isn't perfect, but I'm happy it was number 3 in the list.
Yeah, that's a lot higher than I thought it was going to be.
That's because Jake, my homie Jake.
I'm so anxious to play it, Brad.
Jake brought it home, yeah.
I love it.
It's so much fun. The Gambit system is so great.
Yes.
Yeah, it just feels so good to play. It really does. It's a breath of fresh air for the series. I hope they continue on with that. Some of those elements.
I like that. I can plan ahead, and then when I want to make an audible, it's almost I don't know. It's coaching NFL when you practice and you know what you're going to do, and then you can. If I need to make this call or this option, I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. I'm not a sports guy, but it's planning ahead. It's having strategies, and I love knowing what my characters are gonna do and walking into a battle. And if it's not important, they can do it. If I need to do something, I can choose ahead of time. It's almost doing battles before they happen, and then when I need to shift, I can. Not a paradigm shift because that shit sucks, but.
Yeah. You know, and it'd be nice if something like Kingdom Hearts or even the new Final Fantasy VII Remake had like a mechanic like that.
Tom,
I know they don't. It'd be
Tom,
nice.
how far are you in the
remake?
Sorry. Chapter what?
I'm just doing side quests right now. I'm not too far. You're probably farther than me. I'm still.
He's just jerking off.
All right. Well, you'll be jerking off to Jesse soon enough.
Oh baby. Oh my God.
I mean, Jesse's the real. Jesse's the real.
Yeah, I do like Jesse. Before we go, I want to hear your guys' personal rankings. You guys up for that?
No, I don't know if we need to do the whole rankings, but we can just like do our top 3 or something.
We don't.
All right.
Top 3 is fine. And I also have a question right after that, but we'll wait till the end of this. So my number 1, it's switchable with my number 3, essentially, at this point. My first is probably 6, and then it goes 8, and then 9.
Okay.
I had 6 as number 1, followed by 12, and then 10.
I had 12, 10, 7. And Tom, why is 13 number 1 for you?
Lightning.
Tom's got a weakness.
No.
Anil.
Yes.
Anil. And the rule 34 about her.
I'm 9, 6, and 10. That's me. My top 3.
We're all pretty much on the same boat, which I expected a lot more arguments, except for my weird, outlandish love of Final Fantasy VIII. I don't think
but
we're
you know what, in respect to you, Dylan, I'm probably furthest removed from 8 of all the Final Fantasy series, and I'll in honor of you, I'm gonna return to it. I'm gonna play 8, and I'm gonna give it its due process.
Good for you, Jake.
We'll give it a chance on the Switch. The remaster is very good. Another thing I will say is that when you go into it, do not judge it as a Final Fantasy game. Judge it as an RPG, because a lot of people made the mistake of choosing to judge it as one thing.
Come back to
over the
Raw
other.
Dogs. Dylan and I have our own podcast that we do where it's more deep dives. Next April, we're going to be doing a Final Fantasy VIII deep dive where we do a 2-part episode and we discuss everything about the characters.
Next.
I am right now, Dylan, because April is Final Fantasy month, where you and I at least discuss Final Fantasy games.
Well, we're just hoping for that. We're hoping for that remake.
We can't wait 5 years, but so come back then.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for this, and thank you all for listening. It has been a pleasure to do this for you. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. If you wanted to check us out, go to Patreon at patreon.com, Hair of the Dogcast. If you want to support us, go ahead and throw us a couple bucks. If you don't, that's cool too. Keep on listening. Give us a review. Subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe to us. Get a hold of us at hairofthedogcast at gmail.com. Twitter us at HotDogcast. And Jake, where can people get a hold of you again? Where can they watch you?
At Jaek Rock on Twitter or my Twitch channel are probably the best ways to check me out.
Yeah, you've been streaming a lot of Ori lately.
Yeah, finished Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps, and
back to back.
Back to back. Just loved both of those. Fantastic. Just 100%ed Will of the Wisps the other day.
Please no spoilers.
That's a great
fantastic video games.
It's so good.
Fantastic.
I don't know if there is, but
there's nothing to spoil.
I haven't played it yet.
There's literally
our next episode, we will rank the
spoil.
Ori games, which will be probably a lot shorter.
Congratulations, Will of the Wisps is a little bit better.
And keep it locked in here, the Dogcast, as our Final Fantasy month does continue. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We will see you next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You got it. Anytime you want to come on, man.
Right on.
Yeah.
It was nice
Paladin
having
or
you, Jake.
Dark Knight, whatever you want to be. You're good.